Okay, so we can start with the introduction. Anveshi sir.
Sure. Okay. Hi, Pratiksha. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good morning. Uh, so, like Pratiksha said, I think what I've already heard from her is that the fact that you guys have filled up the Google form to enroll for this particular program, the workshop, and as you filled it, you also gave your sense of what you want to get out of it. So clearly, what I gathered from whatever I've seen already in terms of your responses is that you want to understand the whole aspect of ESG, learn in that process, and in the hope, I'm believing that you will also want to put that into practice at your work and in your career that you're building. So clearly, Sunday morning, if you're on this call doing this for the next 3 hours, you have a sense of purpose and reason for being here. Otherwise, there's enough to do on a Sunday typically. So yeah, great. Thanks to all of you all for being around. And to get started, I am Anveshi Gupta and I head the organization that's called AtQuest Sustainable Solutions. We are a consulting and advisory organization for corporates, schools, and also individuals. So in this context of our workshop, of course, going to talk heavily about the corporate side of things. We will also have a few case studies and exercises that we'll go through, and in that process, learn together. Right. I come with about 18 years of work experience that I've done before I started at Quest. So put together about more than 2 decades of work experience is what I carry with me. Technology and consulting is the space where I have operated in the past. And that's fairly what it is. I don't think we need to spend more on the introduction from my side. So Pratiksha, if you are ready to put these questions up, the MCQs that you said, maybe we'll get that going and then we will move into the conversation, the actual discussion.
Yeah, done.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you, Anveshi sir, for the brief introduction. We'll get to know him more in the detailed lecture which we have today. So everyone, you can see in the meeting chat, there is a Slido event which I have shared. We tried to use it Zoom advanced poll, but it could not work right now. So here you go. And I'm launching this Slido. So you have to just answer it and be there on the Slido till the 10th question we get it from you. It's a true and false question. You can little bit from LinkedIn knowledge from here and there, you have gotten some idea about the framework. That's why you are here. So just try to analyze it and try to answer it typically with the assumptions or whatever you know about the topic. So I'll start the poll. You can put your name and I'm starting the quiz right now. You I'll share my screen as well, but you have to go there on this link and you have to start the poll. Can you put your name over there? Can you see the poll over there? Share. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah, we are on a track. I'm going for a next question. The answer is false over here. Anveshi sir, will you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. Please keep progressing. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Can you please answer? No one is answering this one. Yeah, got it. The answer is true. The answer is false. VRF was formed after CDSP and IIRC come together. We'll get to know more about this in today's lecture. Something happened right now. Are you able to answer this question?
No, it's not allowing us to answer this question.
Yeah, actually I clicked up on this. One of you can tell us what do you think about this? Is it true or false?
It's
I
true.
think it's true.
Okay, cool. I'm going for the next question. Last question. Okay, it's so true. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I think Praveen, this is a leaderboard which we have. So don't mind if you have given a wrong answer or something. We'll learn through in this lecture. So I'll quickly stop recording and Anveshi sir can take over. Thank you so much for answering all the questions.
Right, great. So I think there's 10 questions and a lot of abbreviations, right? In those 10 questions. I got a sense of how you guys answered it, but what is the immediate thought on your mind after answering those 10 questions? What is the immediate thought? Quickly. Anybody, please unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to go on a 3-hour monologue and you'll feel bored.
Yeah, there's a lot for us to learn, and every day it's been evolving. The whole ESG and sustainability ecosystem is evolving, so it's a continuous process. And the very fact that we've failed miserably,
Yeah.
most of us, yeah.
Sure. And I clearly see the messages that are also coming up on chat. So many people say so many alphabets. Someone even went on to the extent of clearly asking, what are these things all about, right? I mean, that's honestly what I thought you would have felt, all of you all. But, and then there are a few people who answered it, way too many acronyms. That's the story of ESG. Yes, Pratiksha says that. So yeah, great enough, right? That's exactly what I think is the crux of what we will discuss. There's way too many things out there, and you guys are from, again, going back to what you guys have mentioned in the Google form, you guys are clearly here to kind of get through this maze in a certain way and walk back with a level of understanding so that you know how to pick something up from this whole maze when you need to do appropriately, and maybe go into that level of detail that is required for your particular profile. Pratiksha, I'm not able to share my screen. You may have to enable that. And while Pratiksha does that, I think what we need to kind of be aware is that we're spending 3 hours, but we will also have to spend a lot more time beyond the 3 hours after this session at your own end. What you will clearly get, and I'm very sure, is a sense of direction of how to go about it. Whether you go about it or not is something that you will have to tell yourself after these 3 hours, right? Should I? Yeah, I'm able to share screen now. No, we're not sharing screen, so we're going to share screen now. Somebody's asking on the chat. So here we are. Okay, I guess now the screen should be visible.
Yes, sir.
Confirm that. Yeah, cool. So we are here to discuss ESG frameworks. Pretty much every question under the sun around the ESG frameworks, etc. And while there is a sense of structure to the way I will run this through, feel free to interrupt, pause, ask questions. If it is an appropriate question to be answered at that very juncture, I will immediately answer it. But if I think it is anyways coming up, I'll let you know. And we'll pause it at that for that moment. Having said that, talking, of course, of a lot of acronyms. What you see on the screen is the very first one, the basis of it all, ESG. So how far do you think we understand ESG? And let's spend the next 5 minutes just to unravel that in your own ways. So I want you to tell me what thoughts come to your mind when someone says environment, which is the E of the ESG. What is the, and of course you have to connect it with the corporate environment, the corporate world. So what is E in your own sense?
Probably the amount of carbon that is being used or the amount of waste that is generating in terms of environmental.
Point taken, Avni. What else? Carbon emissions, yes. E, only E.
Any corporate having the certain guidelines for manufacturing the product in the environmental sustainable way, where it
Okay.
is being manufactured, whether from the finance point of view, how it was, the money was spent, and how it is impact on the environment, the area where the product is manufactured, till the life cycle of the product, everything is not harming to the environment. That is
Wonderful.
the way. Yeah.
Okay, product life cycle and its interrelation with the environment. Guys, tell me more.
Actions, activities, things done by a company are impacting their
Environment. Can you just that are from the company side that are impacting the environment? What impact?
yes. So whatever as an organization, as an organization, whatever you do, being manufactured product, be it people, anything, like the activities are done by the organization directly, indirectly, which is creating an impact
Yes,
on the
I want
environment.
you to touch the last word, the environment, right? You said impact on the environment. What kind of impact?
So these are related to water, waste, pollution, right? Which is damaging the local ecosystem in which they operate.
Yeah. Okay.
Include
Somebody
water,
was,
waste, other things.
yeah, go on, keep going, guys. Keep. Energy usage, you said?
Yes, energy usage, water usage,
yeah, okay.
waste.
Yeah, waste. Point. More. What else is environment? What else is the impact on the environment like?
Greenhouse gases.
Waste,
pollution, management.
And there
Resources.
was go on.
Resources, less utilization of resources, recycling.
Okay. Absolutely.
The amount of natural resources that are being pulled into
extracted out. Yeah. Point. I'm looking for a word that starts with B and it's a long word.
Biodiversity.
Yes, absolutely. Right. The impact on the biodiversity as well. Right. In fact, a couple of your 10 questions that you did upfront, one about TNFD, which was Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, and the other one was SBTN, which is the Science-Based Targets Network. Both deal with nature or biodiversity. We'll talk about that aspect as well, but be aware that environment, of course, the very first thought environment is emissions. But there's so much more to it that we need to be aware of. Of course, there's water, there's biodiversity, there's waste and how we're dealing with it. All of those are aspects that you need to be considerate and aware of. So that's the context of E. Let's go to the S, the social. What do you think S could mean?
The people part of it, where fair employment, payment of wages, gender diversity.
Yes.
Not having
gender equality in the communities where the company operates and how it is impacting those.
Also,
very nice.
Also the surrounding grasslands or agricultural land, how they are getting affected and people's livelihoods getting affected who are not directly employed by the corporation.
Right. Local livelihoods, point taken. Yes.
CSR related.
CSR related, which is of course related to the community and the work you do for and with the community. Yeah.
Health and safety of the workers. Yeah.
Relationship with the society.
Like
surrounding.
Yeah. So did you realize when you guys talk about this, there are two very broad buckets in which you're talking of S. One is the whole aspect of social that relates to the internal stakeholders, which is the employees. The other is the aspect that relates with the larger society and the community out there. The S is definitely a broader subject that covers both internal and external stakeholders of any company. Is that a statement that you're clear when I say that? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So just make sure you keep that in mind as well. We'll progress further into the G now. What is governance all about? I mean, this is a subject that typically people start understanding and unraveling as they progress further into their career. From what I gather from the forms, you are early in your career, and I'll be happy to see what you guys think of it. G.
So governance is basically how the organization operates, the rules that govern the organization.
Nice.
Also the culture of the organization, and a lot of it would come under the ambit of the human resources, of how they have their processes in place for the functioning of the organization. So that
Okay.
would also have a diversity and inclusion. It would also have how it's dealing with minorities within the organization, and of course in the geographies that it's operating in.
Mhm.
So that would come under governance. Also, health, safety, health, the kind of safety, health, and environment, of course, is a for any manufacturing unit that comes under the ambit of the SHE department. But safety and health issues would also come under governance. Also, whether or not organizations have a whistleblower policy or not, and things
Yeah.
like that. So those would come under the minute guidelines. Guidelines of governance,
Okay.
or the
Yeah.
lack
So,
of it. Yeah.
so social health and the aspects like what you just mentioned, of course, have an angle of how they connect with the S part of ESG as well. But what you're saying is the policy aspect of implementing it, the procedural aspect of implementing it, and possibly even being on the right side of the law while implementing it is the G part of that whole
Right.
dimension. Okay, please keep going. Anybody more thoughts? No? How do you deal with the fact that governance is also relevant from a technology company perspective? What could governance be in the context of technology, if at all?
So
Also,
data security.
something called green politics.
Okay, I heard green politics. I'd be very keen to listen to it a little more. Who was talking about it?
This is Avni here.
Avni. So Avni, just give me half a minute. I'll come to you on the green politics, and I want you to speak at least a couple of lines so that we all know what it is, including me, by the way. But before that, I heard somebody say data security. Can that person come back again?
So I'm Indranil, and I mentioned about data
please.
security because there's a lot of so governance with regard to what are the procedures and policies being taken care of by user data security, which of course in the recent years companies like Facebook and Twitter, these have come under the eye of data breach. So that would also come under governance.
Sure. Yeah. Data sensitivity, data security, data transparency, whole idea of data management overall is what is important. Yes, that's definitely relevant. People, I know that we are having 4 or 5 folks continuously kind of talk in, but others, if you don't understand that terms and terminologies, please come in and ask for more. Please come in and ask for more. Otherwise, you'll at the end of 3 hours not have the right takeaways from this session. Yeah. Please feel free. With that said, Avni, I'll come to you. What did you mean when you said green politics?
I'm not very clear on the depth of it, but this is a word I think that's been around in the West, where there are supporters of green politics or environmental or peace movements or feminism and diversity in the workplace, and also some companies where they offset their carbon by taking up villages or certain areas and planting trees. So probably that is my understanding of.
So are you saying that is in the context of whatever you may have read and heard? Is that something that is a negative aspect out there?
Probably not. I'm not very sure about it, but it's something that I've come across.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see if as we explore things like in the conversations that we'll do, we'll also talk about terms like greenwashing and stuff like that. So if that connects to what you're talking, you can probably tell us at that point in time. Fair enough. Any other ideas of G that people want to bring out?
Organization rules or governance structure which will makes the transparency in the way of what they are doing. Say for example, how they are getting the money. Say they have to disclose everything. So how they are getting the approvals for certain projects or certain things. So anti-bribery class has to be there.
Absolutely.
It should be like that. And for the workers level, fair compensation and everything has to be there. Fair, that right and everything. So the governance part will work out on.
No, I think ethical aspects and being on the right side of in fact, not being corrupt is what is important. So yeah, gather that. Thank you. I think what I've heard from, yeah, sorry, go on.
How about risk assessment, Anvesh?
No, definitely yes. So risk assessment is again a broader subject also because it's got an aspect of climate risk that is also related for the E part of it. But definitely being risk aware is important so that you accordingly, like we talked of policies, procedures, etc., that you need to have in place. You will probably in a much better position if you know what risks are your company is facing and accordingly shape your policies, procedures, or update them on a regular basis. Yeah, it's a factor for sure. It's a factor for sure. So what I was saying is that I think that's in a nutshell ESG. And for folks who walked in with a good understanding, nice. For folks who did not, I'm hoping that these last 5-10 minutes that we've spent gives you a sense of what ESG is all about. Now, with that said, we'll jump into the conversation now. So I'm going to put a few things right in front of your screen. So what I'm saying is there are some mega trends in the ESG framework space. I'm talking, and I'm not going to elaborate on them on this very slide, but I want you to just look at this and tell me, does it even ring a bell? Many to one. What kind of a trend in the ESG framework space am I possibly talking when I say many to one? Voluntary to regulatory. What am I talking about? Trust-based to assurance-based. Again, what am I talking about? Can anyone just quickly say what thoughts come to their mind when they see these three boxes?
Many to one could be the planet.
The planet, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Give me a little more on that line.
Many frameworks to one framework, which is more better.
Okay. I think that's fairly clear, but I would be definitely wanting to know the planet angle of it. The framework angle is clear to me. What is the planet angle? Can someone come back again?
So if you're focusing on different impacts by a corporate, especially in terms of environment, so the ultimate goal, what they want to achieve in terms of the overall mitigation in terms of climate change or global warming, can that be one of the things is what I'm asking.
Wonderful. Okay, that's in perspective. And again, you just make sure that you are relating it to the fact that I'm saying it's a trend that is emerging in the ESG framework space today, right? Connect your thoughts to the title that you see at the top here. Yeah. So we'll check others. Anybody? Any other thoughts on the other two? Voluntary to regulatory. Anybody?
The voluntary to regulatory, I can relate to the recent SEBI requirement of BRSR report for top 1,000 companies. So,
and what is about that gives you a sense of voluntary to regulatory?
Because many of the ESG related reporting was mostly voluntary in India. Now for the listed companies, at least it has been given as a regulation to have a BRSR report filed along with their financial reporting.
Okay, great.
So what I think is going to, nowadays ESG is not just an option, but it's a mandatory thing. So that's what regulator is trying to drive me.
Wonderful. Is that Akhilesh who was speaking?
Yes.
Okay, thanks Akhilesh. So does everyone on this call understand BRSR, another acronym, another abbreviation? Can somebody quickly, apart from Akhilesh, of course, come in and tell me what BRSR stands for?
Business Responsibility Social Sustainability Report.
Absolutely right. So BRSR is, of course, a longer form of it is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. It is something that's come into practice or into Indian practice this year onwards. It's something we will also touch upon as we progress. But that's a point taken, Akhilesh. Can we go to this one? Maybe the toughest of the lot, but if you are able to crack it, I'll be very happy. Trust-based to assurance-based.
I think a lot of it will become audited, like based on audits only they will get it reported.
Right.
I'm just guessing. Because earlier it might be self-declared and might be it is moving towards an audit-based report.
Yeah, okay.
Also quantifying instead of saying that it will be greener or it will be like.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, someone says audited, of course, there has got to be that level of numbers out there. Otherwise, what are they auditing after all? Right? Absolutely essential. Yes.
Metric based, so there is something to take a benchmark as.
Yeah, that's also required. Metrics, I mean, measuring and monitoring, both of it is important. Yes. point taken. So I think, yeah, I'm happy that you didn't really go in haphazard directions when I brought these 3 points up. Very much aligned is what I would want to say. Of course, there were a couple of different versions that came out as we discussed. We will see which version is the right one as we progress into the conversation. Then we get this. Then we move to this. Sorry, somebody wanted to ask something? No? Okay. Purpose of ESG frameworks, standards, and programs. Now, in the process of what we will discuss, we will of course talk about the ESG frameworks. There are a whole lot of abbreviations that we talked of, but each of them, do you think serves the same purpose? Is there a different purpose that each of them serves? And what kind of purposes are we to? What does it mean when we say some framework or some standard or some program serves a particular kind of purpose? Before we get there, sorry. What's the difference between a framework, a standard, and a program? Let me quickly spend a minute on that. Framework is something that's a kind of a guideline. It is giving you the construct, the structure to say that try to do it within this boundary. It will tell you how to go about. That is what framework is about. It's just about guiding you, right? A standard is that you stick to it, you don't stick to it. It's more or less binary. It's 0 or 1. You do or you don't do. So you standard, if you follow a standard, you've got to do everything in terms of ticking all the boxes there. That's what a standard is about. And in a program, this one is a very different one in the sense that there are programs out there on ESG, and predominantly I would say in the E more than the S and G, where you are aligning yourself with a mission of achieving something by a certain date, by a certain year. And that's what a program is. There are different broad scale programs that are out there, which corporates have said they are committed to, they are aligning themselves with. And so they will continuously work on that till they achieve that by the milestone year that has been decided. So if that is what a framework, a standard, or a program means, what am I saying here? What does it mean when somebody is committing and contributing? What does that mean?
It's like a company saying that they will be net zero by 2030, and by that way they contribute to the ESG part of it.
So one is they commit, which is what you said, declare a year, and then they start contributing. Is that what you're saying, Venugopal?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, let's say that is what we understand out of commit and contribute. We'll move to getting verified and certified. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, for a net zero, they used to have a certain other certification like SBTi based. They will have some distance of emission with this baseline we are going to reduce. So it will be approved target by SBTi. They will go through and they will approve, and again they will verify and they will get certified. And same for CDP also, like that they can.
Okay, SBTi, I gather what you're saying. SBTi, for everyone on the call, is Science-Based Targets Initiative. Basically, an organization that gives you an opportunity to declare your target, typically your net zero target. And of course, in the process of the net zero target, you'll also say what you want to do in the next 5 to 10 years as a near-term target. But if that is the target you want to give to SBTi, SBTi will verify if it is something that is well thought, or is it just randomly some statement you're making. So that is the verification, but that's a target level verification. Are there any other verifications?
More like I think the product verification, so that verify, assume that there's a claim that this is a eco-friendly product, right? So it is, one is verification, and then certification by a third-party company which is actually doing the audit and certifying that product.
Absolutely. So it could also be product.
Yeah, probably the materials that have been sourced are sourced
right,
socially just, or it's.
Yeah. I mean, it could also be about saying supply chain and what you do, how your supply chains are being run, right?
How about life cycle assessment?
LCA, yeah, LCA. And what typically is the standard somebody would have suggested? Sorry?
See, the environmental
CDP and ISO 14067.
I heard you say ISO, but what did you also say? CDP?
Yes.
Okay, CDP, LCA certification. I'm not able to join the dots, but
environmental
maybe
product declaration.
Okay, no, I heard you say ISO 14064, so that's definitely on. That is
Yes,
what.
eco assessment of the products.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. So that's also something that we need to be aware of as a standard, as a certification and verification
What is
aspect.
the standard? Anveshi, can you just repeat? ISO?
ISO 14,006. So 14,000 family. So ISO is, I believe all of us would know, is International Standards Organization. It is a broader body that sets standards for pretty much everything under the sun, not just about ESG, not just about sustainability. So they've got a whole lot of standards which are out there for information security, for your I don't know, operational effectiveness, for everything under the sun. For the ESG context, for the sustainability context, 14,000 family, which is 14,001 onwards, 14,000 onwards rather, is what is relevant. And in this specific context, the lady was mentioning about 14,064, which is the one that deals with LCA. So you can always look up on the internet and you'll find enough and more literature on ISO standards as well. Okay, so that's getting verified. Let's move to the next one, disclose and report. What do you think that means?
Transparency in something like carbon disclosure report. So transparency in declaring what is your carbon footprint or environmental footprint, plastic footprint, etc.
Sure. Okay, that's good. Somebody else was trying to say something.
The sustainability reporting can be one of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, definitely. BRSR can be one of it for that matter. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fairly straightforward. Disclosures and reporting, right? We know what the word particular disclose and report clearly kind of gives it away. What's earning recognition? What does that mean?
Earning recognition, I would say, is that when you are reporting and disclosing under a particular framework, then you are getting a stamp of approval, as it were. And for that, you get recognized for the kind of work that one is doing. And so that is, and of course, more often than not, most of these sustainability reportings earlier, especially when I'm talking about the GRI framework, used to be happening when and this is when I'm talking about during the 90s and early 80s, is that when they were seeking funding. So it was also earning recognition for the fact that the kind of whether or not an organization is a good corporate citizen.
Yep.
And investing companies don't have to do the due diligence or spend money on the due diligence separately. Once you've already reported under, say, for example, a GRI framework, so they know that you've gone through the rigor of the evaluation to actually earn that stamp of recognition, and so you are worth investing in. So I think earning recognition would come under that ambit. The other question is that, of course, in the coming years, we've seen a lot of these frameworks coming up. But why are there so many frameworks? I mean, why is there an ESG or a TCFD? Because earlier, for example, I come from the GRI background.
Indranil, I'm going to pause you at this very point because you're kind of leading me right into my next slide. But
okay.
Hold on for a minute, right? So before we go to the next slide, I think what Indranil said about earning recognition is very obviously about saying your work is getting a stamp of approval, so to say. It's not equal to verified and certified, but you're also being evaluated and graded and given a certain score. Maybe it's the ESG ratings. In fact, I think there's a session coming up on ESG ratings as part of the different workshops that Pratiksha and team are running. So please do look out for that. But earning recognition is all about saying you got some badge of honor, something that you want to kind of put yourself out there. You can put out there and say, look, we've earned this recognition for the work we've done. And that's the kind of purpose. So if you look at those 4 statements, that each of the corporates out there could have a different purpose to do what they are doing. Some of them may be doing it for all the 4. Some may be doing for a couple of them. Some may be doing just for one of these 4. That depends on how you as a corporate are looking out for the ESG, looking out towards the ESG world. So broadly be aware that those are the purposes. And mind you, this slide is important as you go into the next few slides. So keep all that you're seeing on this slide, keep this in your mind. Yeah. Okay. With that said, I think Indranil was bringing up a point about why so many frameworks. So let's get to that story.
Hey,
Yeah.
Anveshi,
Yeah.
this is
Sorry.
Sabra here.
Yes, Sabra. Yeah.
The first point, many to one, I think I
Yeah.
missed that. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
So I didn't really elaborate much on it, but what I heard from people is two views. One, I don't recall the second one, but the one view that I clearly heard was the fact that there's multiple frameworks out there and how it could potentially be coming together into one at this point, right?
Okay.
So that's what I heard, and at this point with this slide, all that I was trying to rather gauge is how you interpret what you see on the screen. And in the process of the next few slides, we'll uncover this ever. So
All right.
you'll not miss much.
Okay,
You'll not
thank
miss
you.
much. Yeah. All right, cool. So here's what I'm talking about now. We're talking of current consolidation efforts in sustainability reporting. Now, Indranil had a point. I'm sure all of us had points when we even started this whole session. So many acronyms, so many frameworks, so many ABCDs out there. I don't know if you've heard of this term called the alphabet soup. If that's not something you've heard, it's an interesting jargon to use in your conversations as well. Basically trying to bring out the fact that there's so many ABCDs out there and you got to really get your head around it, wrap your head around it. And we'll do that in a very sort of a methodical fashion in the next 10 minutes. What you see at the bottom, and keep an eye on the legend at the bottom, when you see those arrows, the blue arrow as you see at the bottom, it's all about saying it's an organizational linkage. And then there's also mergers and consolidations happening, and that will be represented in the dark, a filled kind of an arrow, a black filled arrow. And the dotted arrow represents something that is a collaboration, joint effort, right? So with that kind of a legend, let's get started. Now, we talked of voluntary at some point in the previous slide, and we will look at what it means, because for the fact that the whole space of ESG reporting has been till about last year heavily voluntary, not just in India, I'm talking globally. In fact, I would rather say India in the context of what has happened with BRSR, with the regulation coming in, has been the front runner, because the US, the European region, and also the UK are still to come up with that regulation in their countries, in the same lines of what we are doing here in BRSR. But having said that, even till this year, a heavy amount of disclosures is all voluntary. Now, what does that mean in the voluntary space? What's happening? Okay, so how many of you understand when I say integrated reporting? It's a yes or a no. It's not more than that. I only want to know yes or a no.
Yes.
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 Okay. Yeah. Can I also assume that there are a few no's, or can the
No.
people who no? Okay. Yeah. Great. I want to hear that a lot more, because that makes it more purposeful to kind of have the conversation. So how many of you would understand if I were to say sustainability report? A yes or a no again? Yeah.
Yes.
Am I hearing a no anywhere? Please feel free. A no is still okay. Nobody has any issue. Somebody said no. Okay, great.
It could be not very sure whether my assumption is right or not.
Fair enough. That's okay. And how many of you would be aware of what an annual report is about? Annual
Yes.
report.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I am waiting to see if it's all yes.
No.
No.
Okay. Fair enough. So
because what gets covered, not very sure. It depends on office to office or
on a corporate to corporate basis. Yeah, company to company basis. Fair enough. But do we know what the purpose of an annual report is? Can somebody just bring out what's the purpose of the annual report?
So the annual report basically tells you a report card of how the organization is fared financially. It shares its P&L statements, and very specifically financially. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's the bottom line, right? The financial aspects is what the annual report is about. Of course, guys, when you open an annual report, it doesn't start on page 1 with the numbers. That's not how it is. There's a lot of narrative. There's a lot of information about what the company's done, what initiatives have been taken. There's also forward-looking statements that are made in that report. And then there's this bottom part of the annual report that typically have all the numbers and the tables in there. And like Indranil clearly said, it is about numbers in terms of money, finance. So annual report, if it's all financial, whom is it meant for? Who's the typical audience they're trying to? Sorry?
The shareholders.
Shareholder, right? So simple. Annual report is financials. Financials are meant for shareholders. Let's keep that thought in mind. Then there is the sustainability report. If it's a sustainability report, what do you think we should be seeing in that kind of a report?
A sustainability report will not only cover the financial aspect of it, but the social and the environmental aspect.
I heard you say not only the financials. Are you also saying it includes the financial?
It includes the financial. So it's ideally divided into three parts: the financial, the economic, the social impact, and the environmental impact.
Okay. What does the financial section of the sustainability report typically have? Because you said P&L and everything in the annual report. What does it have here?
So it has predominantly everything what an annual report has. I mean, majorly it has everything what an annual report has.
I want
but
you
it
to
is
hold that thought, Indranil. Maybe we'll discuss that, or rather elaborate that, and I'll kind of pin that down a little more. But hold on to that thought. Yeah, I have a point of view that will probably evolve as we put this slide out there. Anybody else on the sustainability report?
Maybe the CSR reportings and the financials related to CSV.
Okay, CSV you said, or CSR you meant?
Both actually.
What is CSV? Did you say CSV, and what does that mean?
Creating shared values and spending money.
Wonderful. Is that what CSV stands for?
I mean, in my organizational context, yes.
Nice. No, that's good. This is exactly what we should probably also unearth so that all of us are aware. Okay, that's interesting. I know of CSR for sure. Yeah, what you said is point taken. What else?
Also for the in-house employees, if there are any initiatives being taken in training or lifestyle purposes.
Somebody earlier in the conversation brought out the aspect of employee health, employee well-being, etc., health and safety in manufacturing units. Could that also be talked about in the sustainability report?
LTA or lost time incidents, and even in the supply chain, they used to these many reviews we have conducted, these many suppliers, say for example, tier 1 suppliers or their baseline critical supplier has been audited, these many workplace injuries at the supplier premises, these many incidents in the factory premises, this much of greenhouse gases has been reduced in the own manufacturing sites and contract manufacturer on the supplier, all will be covered.
So with what you just said, Arun, there's a lot of numbers that you also talked about, right?
Yeah.
You've talked of different things, and there's also metrics and numbers in that, right? Now, how does it feel when you're reading a sustainability report, which is a separate document, and a financial report or the annual report, which is a separate document, and you're not able to join the two? Like have we heard of greenwashing? We've heard of that word, I'm happy to elaborate. Basically, greenwashing is about saying you are putting a picture out there, but inner truth is very different. Right? That's what greenwashing in a simple statement is. You're putting something out there to look greener, but deep inside it isn't so. And what's the best way to verify it, especially in cases where you're talking of a high emission industries, right? These are like oil and gas and all, and they do a solar project. And this is, I'm not taking names here, but if you want to look up, there'll be enough, where a oil and gas company has said we've done a renewable energy project. And of course, that's good to do. But the way it happens out there is that they definitely talk a great volume about the fact that they've done a renewable energy project, having no mention or limited mention, I would say, of the fact that even today, 80% of their money is going towards oil and gas and not towards renewables, or 90% for that matter. So what does it mean? You're doing one odd project, of course, big scale maybe, doesn't really change the fact that you are still having 80%, 90% of your portfolio contributing to emissions out there. And how do you verify that? I told you there's a financial report which will give you that sense. Where is the money going? What is it being spent on, etc. Then there's a sustainability report where you're looking at the renewables. Wow. Now, if you're looking at them disparately as independent documents, connecting the dots is left to how well and how intelligent you are, or I am, or anybody else is, right? It's not so obvious. What's the best way to sort that? That is where an integrated report would come into picture. If somebody said we did not know what an integrated report is, that is exactly what it is meant to do. Bring it together, the financial side of the story, the non-financial side of the story, and connect them in a manner that the person who's reading it, and now no longer it's a person who's a shareholder only. It's a stakeholder. It could be a consumer, it could be your employee, it could be a regulator, it could be just about anyone out there. And now they're able to clearly see how your money flow, cash flow is aligning with your thoughts and principles that you said are so important for you on the ESG front. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
So I had a doubt.
Yeah.
Aren't sustainability reports already an integrated report by your, because when you talk about an integrated report, my sense was that an integrated report is basically putting making sense of the numbers across reporting frameworks, because in certain geographies there's an X framework which is more popular, and other geographies in which a large organization operates in, probably a different framework would be popular.
Yeah.
So coming out with an integrated report would make sense of the numbers that one is reporting across these various reporting
Not really.
frameworks.
So by definition, integrated report is what is about bringing financial and non-financial together. But what you're saying, on a case basis, maybe it is also relevant for them to unravel the complexity of, because of the fact that they're in different geographies and reporting differently in different places. So how do you accommodate that? Just as an example, BRSR, we talked of BRSR a while back. In the guidelines that BRSR has given, it says if you as a company is already doing something like a CDP or a GRI out there, and that's something you've been doing for years, you don't have to do a BRSR again. Just tell us, for this particular section of the BRSR, which part of your GRI report can I consider as a reference?
Right.
Now that's one way. But in the very definition of the word integrated reporting, it is about combining the financials and the non-financial conversations in one go. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
I have a question here.
Sure, Avni, go on.
So for this integrated report, who is it exactly targeted at, or who are the people for whom this report is being built? So is it the organization itself for their internal review, or is it for the public?
It is meant for the public. In fact, if you go to websites of at least the leading companies today, even in India, I mean, and go to that section where they publish their annual report, and that's been done for ages now. People have been publishing annual reports for ages under this section that's typically called the investor section on their websites. They are now having enough and more annual integrated reports published. So it is available for all of us out there.
Okay, so those apply to extremely large corporations.
Not really. It's the fact that maturity is always something you expect to begin with the larger ones, right?
Okay.
Hey,
Even today, as we talk of ESG,
guys, and I know that we are getting very deep into some conversations, whereas I'm still trying to grasp the basics of all of this. So a quick question, is it meant for the basics, or are we going to get into very specific and detailed things right away? I'm just trying to get a grasp so that I know.
You talk about how the next couple of hours will pan out. Is that what you're saying, Vivek?
Yeah, and I mean, we were at a very basic thing, right? Which is like, what are the voluntary and what are the consolidated efforts? But I see a lot of details or sub threads getting formed. So which I'm not able to wrap my head around. So
okay, where are you lost? I'm happy you bring it
lost
up.
From the very just as all of this Q&A started on something that we were just going through. So Anveshi, I'd love to hear more of you versus just the Q&As going on, right?
So are you saying you want to see what more on the screen than on the talk?
The talks are fine. I just want to make sure that that we also cover the topic versus just doing Q&As.
We will. Rest assured, we will.
Hi.
So, but that's the reason we're having this conversation is also because we want to get you into the context of what you'll see. The picture that I'm going to paint on this slide is going to be as complicated as it can be. So you can't really decipher that if I just paint the picture. Right? So we will get there. We will get there.
Anveshi sir and Vivek, we have a dedicated question answer session, but sometimes we want to know that what exactly you guys, because you all are from different kind of industries and you all have a different sort of experiences. Few of them who have better understanding, few are from the basic line, will just understand it in this 2.5 hour, and after that if you have any question you can reach out to me. I'll help you out.
Yeah, just want to make sure that it's for all of us and not a one-on-one consulting.
Absolutely not. Don't worry. Yeah, noted. Point taken. Right. So with that said, integrated report, are we at this point clear about what that is all about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So with that said, if integrated report was to be required, somebody out there has to call out how the financials and non-financials can be connected. And that's exactly where the consolidation efforts will also start coming into play. What you see on the screen as consolidation efforts is what will come into play. And that's happening as we speak. So there's this thing called the IFRS Foundation. How many of you would have heard of this?
No.
Not me.
No.
Yeah. So it's something that's the body that has pretty much across the globe, except for the US, I believe, declared or rather defined how financial reporting is done. This has been the history of the foundation across the globe. And in India, we take our accounting principles, the accounting guidelines, also from the IFRS as a reference point. So IFRS Foundation has a body called the IASB, International Accounting Standards Board. And IASB defines something called IFRS as a reporting guidelines, right? Now, that's the financial side of the story that has been around for a long time now, ages now, couple of decades easily, right? If IFRS Foundation has been around with IASB and the guidelines on IFRS have been around for financials, now we are talking about the non-financial side of the story, where ISSB has been formed in 2021 November. Now, ISSB, which is International Sustainability Standards Board, has been given the responsibility to come out with ISDS, which is Sustainability Disclosure Standards, International Sustainability Disclosure Standards. The idea with this is that this will form, the ISDS will form the baseline of pretty much everything that will be reported out there on the sustainability front, while tying it to the financial side of the story as well. So ISSB has been given that task, and they are in the middle of that journey where they are coming out with ISDS, which is the Sustainability Disclosure Standards. Now, when I talk to you about integrated reporting, when I talk to you about financial reporting and annual reporting and sustainability reporting, the story of bringing it all together is happening in this part of the picture as we speak. And if this is where the picture is happening or unraveling, somebody had a question which said, what is the whole point of having so many frameworks? And that's exactly what they're also trying to kind of clear the whole clutter around with. So what does that mean? So there's a different set of standards and organizations that are out there, which are now consolidating themselves, or rather merging into one. Now we're talking of SASB, which is Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. Again, one of those organizations that has been around for easily about 5 to 10 years, maybe here or there, but that's the kind of existence that this organization has had. They have also had for a long time industry specific standards on sustainability that they have documented. So SASB has been the benchmark, the reference point for anybody who wanted to say, for my industry, I'm in iron and steel, what does sustainability mean and what should I really be addressing? If I'm into technology, what should I be addressing? So they have got 77 industries, SASB, that they have clearly articulated what does it mean for each of those 77 industries. If that is the level of detail that they have, then there is this other organization that's called IIRC, which is International Integrated Reporting Council, I guess. I mean, I may be here or there with the abbreviations, but I'm sure Google will do a better job than I can. But the point is, IIRC is all about bringing out principles that are relevant for integrated reporting. IIRC has had that responsibility with itself for a good 5-10 years again, where they have worked on frameworks. It's called the IR framework, Integrated Reporting Framework, which guides on what sort of principles have to be adhered to get to the integrated reporting scenario. Now, why are we talking about? We're talking about this because in November 2020, they came together and became one organization, and it was called the VRF, Value Reporting Foundation. One of those abbreviations that was there out in the first 10 questions that you answered. Now, VRF has been, like I said, been around for less than a year or so, a year and a half. But today, as we speak, VRF is no longer in existence. What does that mean? It has now gone into ISSB. I told you about the fact that this side of things is forming the global baseline for sustainability reporting. And like I said, there's so many frameworks, and we brought that out. If there's so many frameworks, it eventually makes sense for ISSB to take that master role and consolidate everything. And so VRF has gone into ISSB. So has that's happened in Jan 2022, which is early this year. So has this CDSB, which is Corporate Disclosure Sustainability Board. Now this one comes as an offshoot of CDP. CDSB is an offshoot of CDP. And the reason I'm bringing CDP is because from whatever I've heard, it looks like that's a far more familiar name that rings a bell with all of you all. CDSB, as an organization, has also had integrated principles in their literature. Their focus has been how do you draft, or what sort of guidelines should you adhere to when you talk of integrated reporting. And so if you notice, the agenda of CDSB and the agenda of IIRC has a significant overlap as well. So this side of the story is all about the fact that things are coming together into ISSB, which means you would not hear much about these organizations anymore. Remember the alphabet soup we talked about. That alphabet soup is gradually getting a little less clumsy, right? That's the way you should look at the fact that these organizations are not there anymore. But be aware that this ISSB is still in an evolutionary stage. And because it's in an evolutionary stage and these ISDS is being put together right now as we speak, the frameworks, like I said, integrated reporting framework. I told you about 77 industries that these guys look at, SASB. Now, these frameworks and these standards will be in existence for a while now, although they'll be governed by ISSB. Everything is going to be unavailable as an organization, but these standards will still be out there in the ISSB's gamut of things, because they have to, of course, come out with the right way to bring it all together and maybe declare them as the ISDS. So be aware of that aspect, that dynamic as it's playing out right now today, right? So this is one side of the story. Then there's this other one. We were talking of consolidation efforts that are happening today, and that's the picture here. Now we talk of standalone. What does that mean? These are entities that haven't come into this whole picture of consolidation yet, I would say. Now, what does a standalone world look like today? These are names that are far more familiar. We talked of GRI, we talked of TCFD, we talked of CDP. Now, GRI, it has been around for 25 years now. They probably are the ones who got this whole thing started in terms of putting a framework out there and now declaring themselves as a standard. So GRI is something that is pretty much the reference point for most corporates as we speak. And if GRI is that kind of a reference point, ISSB did not wait and did not they did realize rather that that's the kind of clout and power that GRI has. So there needs to be some sort of bringing in that story of GRI as well into ISSB. So what they've done is that they've entered into an MOU with GRI to say we will jointly work on developing the ISDS with the reference point of GRI. So GRI still remains standalone, and that's why the dotted line, it's about a declaration that happened to say we'll work with GRI. ISDS will be evolved with GRI, the organization, and GRI, the standards that are out there. At the same time, TCFD has been a reference point for ISSB from day one. I told you it came about in November 2021. TCFD has been the reference point for them to begin with from day one. So point being that while these are the popular ones, there's a good amount of reading into or referring to these aspects that is happening right as we speak. In fact, CDP in this month, as we speak, COP27 last week, announced that they will, in their questionnaire, include aspects or bring in a module of how they can also refer to ISSB for corporates. So there's all of those joint efforts that are happening. And why is it all happening? Because like I said earlier, this is going to be sooner than later, the global baseline. So keep an eye on ISSB as it happens in the next couple of years, and you will know what that means like. But this is where things are, right? And then apart from all these efforts that are happening on the voluntary side, this is all voluntary, right? Then now we talk of regulatory. And we remember one of the mega trends we spoke of earlier, voluntary to regulatory. And somebody did point out saying that's what's happened in India as well. A lot of it was voluntary, and now it's becoming, because of BRSR, becoming a regulatory angle. Now, that's one side of it. But what is also happening is that with ISSB, they are now talking to the government authorities in countries. They're not saying that we will become just another standard, even if it's a global baseline, just another standard in the voluntary space. We want ISSB to become an aspect that is directed by the government itself. which means it's got to also start becoming a lot more regulatory driven as well. How does that happen? We'll have to wait and see, but that's the ambition that ISSB has. In fact, again, straight out of COP27, Nigeria has been the first country that's declared that they will go with ISSB related standards for a part of their corporate disclosure. Right now, on the regulatory front, the ones that are fairly out there are the ones from different geographies. You are talking of United States. The Security Exchanges Commission, which is the SEC, has brought out guidelines. I think about 2 weeks back, they would have finalized it in terms of all the comments from public have been taken. They call it the climate related disclosures very vaguely at this point, but I think they'll give it a proper name. But this one is something that they have brought out. I have a dedicated slide which we'll talk about on this one. But important is that's happened in the US, and that's only happened this year. They've only brought it out, not yet put it into action, brought it out for discussion and deliberations at this point. That's the US and what they're doing there. The EU, again, European Union, has this thing called EFRAG, I think European Finance Regulatory something. But the point is, these guys have come out with the ESRS, which is the European Union's Sustainability Reporting Standards. Now, this is something that has a strongest of double materiality, if that is something that rings a bell. Again, double materiality essentially is about saying financial angle plus the non-financial angle, giving both due and important consideration. Now, ESRS is by far, from the regulatory front, the most comprehensive and exhaustive expectation of corporates that is out there. We have a bunch of them today, but this is by far the most comprehensive and exhaustive one. So again, I think you may have heard by now about the fact that EU, in terms of the way it has approached this whole aspect of climate change and ambitions and climate action, has been in the forefront. And so there they had to really make sure that they are very tightly binding this whole regulation. So this is also something that will only roll out next year. But at this point, it is still a standard that is documented and ready. So EU ESRS is what we're talking about. At the same time, EU ESRS, which is, I just said, is the regulatory aspect that applies to the European Union, and ISSB have jointly declared they will work together to make a strong alignment between the two. Remember, ISSB doesn't intend to be only for the voluntary world. It intends to get geographies and their role with the government authorities. So this is one of the ways they will probably. Yeah. So, okay. Before we move forward, then we have the UK FCA, which is the Financial Controlling Authority in the UK, and they have released the Sustainability Disclosure Reporting, SDR. So again, something that comes into effect, I think, next year onwards. That's the UK story, and they've also kind of brought this out in the open this year. So it's also happening as we speak in 2022. SEBI and BRSR been around for a couple of years now, which means last year and this year. Last year was a voluntary approach. This year is going to be a regulatory approach. So this financial year, all the reporting that companies, the top 1,000 companies have to do, they have no option to go back and do something that was the previous version called the BRR, which is business responsibility reporting. They have to go about and do the BRSR this year onwards, right? So that's the SEBI story. And then the Singapore story, there's the Singapore Exchange, the stock market regulator, SGX, who's brought out some guidelines on sustainability reporting. Now that's in a nutshell, of course, not saying we've covered every geography. In a nutshell, what's happening on the regulatory side. I'm happy to take a pause. I told you this is a picture that will paint out with a lot of names and abbreviations, and happy to take a pause and see what you guys think of it.
Right. Thank you. This is very helpful. So let me make sure that I understand this. So for example, if I am a company in India, I've got to file my BRSR, and do I also have a liability towards IASB, or that is something that is voluntary?
At this point, in fact, ISSB, which is in works, hasn't yet come to that stage where you are having to even declare anything on those lines. It's not yet there.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
This is very nascent. It'll take them easily a couple of years. But even when they evolve to that point, I think it is all about saying how far do they align with the regulatory authorities in India, SEBI and MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and see how well can they bring in that whole synchronization like they're trying to do with the EU.
Okay.
Right?
So
at this point, it's BRSR.
To this point, India is only BRSR.
Absolutely. Unless you have other things that you are voluntarily trying to report on, like GRI, TCFD, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And, I'll be really curious, and I'm a very, very beginner at this. So, one of the things that I'm very curious about is what does GRI mean at a high level, TCFD and CDP? What are they? I know about ISSB, but these three, what's the need for them to evolve separately?
GRI was, like I said, the whole origin of sustainability reporting. At that very point, 25 years back, sustainability wasn't the word that was spelled the same way, right? So it's only coming out in the open. A few of us have started talking about so very obviously because it's become a lot more commonplace. So back in the day, GRI was something that was required to even get that conversation going. So what they've done, they released a bunch of guides for different aspects of sustainability. I think they have something for the economic, the social, and the governance side of things, right?
Okay.
Now, in that very context, they have guides that are called 101, 201, and a whole lot of books. If you go to the GRI website, you can download that 40 odd volumes of what they call GRI disclosures. Now, as a company, those 40 odd volumes is 40 different topics. As a company, you need not necessarily feel like every topic is of significance to you. Child labor, as an example, is far more relevant for a manufacturing setup than it is for a services setup.
Correct.
So you would probably pick that particular volume that talks of people rights and child labor a lot more if you were a manufacturing entity. So it's about saying pick and choose from the 40 odd volumes and report in your annual report saying I have made sure that we are aligned with the guidelines that were given out there in GRI volume 103 as a number, right? And that's how GRI is all about. TCFD is to say that if you are in, this is a lot more applicable for financial institutions than non-financial, but not saying it is not applicable. It's more for financial, that's all. TCFD is all about saying you have risks, climate-related risks. You face those risks and you have to assess those risks. You need to make sure that your risks and the impacts of those risks are documented in explicit terms.
Okay.
And where do you do it? How do you do that? That's the kind of aspect that TCFD covers. It's heavily about saying you assess those risks in numerical terms and then connect it to the financial story. You cannot say I'm projecting a revenue growth of 50% over the next 5 years and not having accounted for the fact that you also are vulnerable to climate risks, right? So that 50% number has to be very, very balanced in your reporting, saying, yes, I'll grow 50%, but because of the fact that there could be shocks because of climate emergencies, risks, floods, wildfires, whatever, I think I'll have to cut it down to 45% or 40% for that matter, because of the numerical way to look at it. So task force on climate related financial disclosures, TCFD is about. Right? The annual reporting system, more than anything else, it's an annual reporting system where you go out there and fill up 100 odd pages of questions where you tell what you've been doing on different facets of ESG. And depending on how you fill it, what you fill in there, and what sort of confidence you are demonstrating in that whole questionnaire, they give you a to F rating.
Okay.
Right, and that's the way the CDP world works.
Understood. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, fair enough. Folks, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, what I can see that there are different regulatory reporting formats for the different region. It's maybe for the ESRS, BRSR. Now the question is this: as an Indian organization, if I comply with the BRSR, okay, are you simultaneously I'm complying with the ESRS, or I need to go for the different standard for when I have to do business in the different region? I have to go for the different standards to comply with.
Just help me with your name. Ashish. Okay, Ashish. For me to answer that from a BRSR angle would be a little tough, only because BRSR is just about having its first year today. But I'll tell you the other angle, just so that your answer is still there. So if you were to be doing something to do with reporting on GRI, or for that matter, any other framework that you are comfortable with apart from GRI. But GRI, if you were to do, I know for the fact that the SEBI guys, when they came out with the BRSR guidelines, they drew a lot from GRI. Now, what does that mean? If you have been doing GRI for years, let's say the last 5 to 8 years you've been doing GRI related reporting, all you have to do when you do BRSR is say, I don't think I will report it again to you. I will give you a reference to this page number and the chapter number of my GRI aligned report. Right? That is all that but all you have to make sure is that even the BRSR, if you've seen that template for the BRSR questionnaire, it's got a bunch of different tables that you have to fill in. All you have to make sure the data points is that that BRSR is asking for is already accommodated in your GRI reporting, and you can safely give a reference to the GRI report.
Yeah. In fact, most of the standards, whatever the standalone standards, I just able to go through that. All are almost covering the different aspects of the business on the sustainability front.
Absolutely. In fact, that is also another reason, right, Ashish, why we are talking of consolidation. Why do we need to have so many of those things? Can there be a consolidation? That's exactly why I'm saying keep your strong eye on these folks, ISSB guys. Keep a strong eye on these.
Don't you think that previously there are different standalone standards were there like GRI, TCFD, CDP.
Yeah.
Again, we are focusing the same way on the regulatory front that there are
absolutely right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, you're right. However, the regulatory side of things becomes a little more complicated because you as a country, you as a government only have authority to tell what your folks should do. You cannot, unfortunately, go and tell what Europe should do, what US should do. And that is hopefully, and that is hopefully what the ISSB conversations with somebody like EU, the ISSB conversations with somebody, like I said, Nigeria has come forward in the African region. All of those hopefully will get to that point where we can clearly call out ISSB as what it wants to be as the global baseline for sustainability reporting. Yeah.
There is a doubt actually. If I am as an Indian organization, if I follow the BRSR, then why I should follow the GRI and TCFD? Then definitely I am following, which is basically my country has given to me.
Yeah.
Okay, then what about these standalone, these standards?
Absolutely. So be aware, Ashish, that these things are just emerging. BRSR, this is the first year. The other countries, I told you, even they've not even had their first year. The first year will be 2023. In fact, the next set of slides that I have will tell you a sense of the timeline. Let me jump in. Let's look at this, right? We're talking of ESRS now, European region. So if you look at this, it is something that is set to become mandatory for 50,000 EU companies from 2023. Not yet there. So if you're doing it in EU, as per ESRS, there's very limited reason for you to continue doing on GRI. That's my take on this, right? It may so happen that a company decides that I will still continue to do GRI because that's something that my stakeholders have already gotten used to. I think is good, but my stakeholders are used to my reports having an alignment with the GRI. Right.
Now see, if I refer this point, set off to become mandatory 50,000 EU companies to follow the ERSF.
Yeah.
The same way, BRS is also asking that first 1,000 company need to follow the BRSR from 2023. Yes. Now, India as a country asking for the organization to follow the BRSR. Okay, EU as a region is asking for their EU companies to follow the ERSR.
Yeah.
Now, when as an Indian company I will go to do a business at the European region, then do I need to again go for the ESRS?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. That's unfortunately the answer is yes.
Then consolidation is not exactly there. Okay.
Yeah,
international like
very clearly.
That's
exactly, Ashish. If you see, none of these boxes are linked to any other. There's no consultation from geography to geography perspective at all happening today. At all, there's zero. Also, because you got to understand, this is a journey where they've only begun taking the first step today. Expecting them to also be mature enough to consult across geographies is far too much. Far too much. You will have to live with this dynamic. This is a transitionary phase. It'll probably be 5 to 10 years before this transition completely happens. But be aware that they've just taken the first step. So be considerate to that as well.
if you see that, on this context, I also was able to consolidate all the standards in a single umbrella. Okay, say what is ISO 40001 for US is a similar thing is ISO 40000 for the India.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
But in this case, okay,
it isn't
understood.
so. Yeah, it isn't so. You're right.
Yeah.
The story is different here.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No, not at all. So if you just on this slide, as we are, we're talking of the fact that till this year, it was as less as 11,000 odd companies. So straight away, big jump to 50,000. So they're also increasing the ambit. Today, 1,000 companies in India is what we're talking about in BRSR. I would want to believe, and this is what was told during the discussions and deliberation stages when SEBI was still coming out with BRSR, that they want to make this available, or rather accessible and implementable to a lot more companies, including even the companies that are not listed on the share market. Today, as an example, the modern tech companies like Flipkarts and the Byju's of the world are not listed on the share market. Does that mean that they are not big enough to report on these aspects? No, they need to. But what is governing them? Nothing. So there will always be that gradual progression, and let's say the scope will grow on other companies in other geographies as well. Right? So that's the other angle. So this is EU. The story in EU is what you're looking at on your screen. If I ever go to show you this story in the US, notice the timelines again. They've just released that whole guideline this year. The discussions have happened, and you notice the timeline. They're saying larger companies, and that's what they mean by large accelerated filers. It's 2023, and the reporting will happen in 2024, or rather, 2023 reporting happens in 2024. Now, scope 1 and 2 is only what they're talking about. And again, if scope 1, 2 is something that's familiar to all of you, I'm very happy. But if you're not, please let me know. I'm happy to touch upon that. But they are only asking scope 1 and 2 in the beginning year. Then say include scope 3 in the next year, 2024, 2025. So this is large to smaller companies. SRC is, I think, small reporting companies. That's what it stands for. So look at the kind of timeline they have. 2026 is when these small companies come into picture. It'll take us all a while to get there. And only when this is done, can you expect them to even talk to the European region or any other geography for that matter to see if there's a potential consolidation that we could do even from the regulatory front.
Right. And I think therefore, Anveshi, the trend that you're also trying to highlight is that the net will continue to be cast wider and wider in this area, and it will only continue to have more and more companies trying to come into this ambit. Yep. Is that fair?
Yeah. And where we should be hopeful about this bottom picture. There's increasing realization that it makes sense to go into one. There's increasing realization from these guys to work in joint efforts. And hopefully there's going to be gradually that increasing realization on this front as well. Right?
Fair point.
Yeah. So that's the story from the US. Then there's the story that I have from I think this is Singapore, 23, 24, 25. You see those timelines and you get a sense of it. And the BRSR story that we have spoken so much about. So I'm not spending time on these only because I think these are all geographical aspects that you could always look out. I have also provided a link on each of those pages for you to read up if you were interested. But the picture being, it's a story in transition as we speak. Right? Now we get to the whole conversation about the fact that there's so much of reporting that we're talking about, this GRI, there's this regulatory aspects, there's something that we could also do from CDP, etc., etc. Now, there's this growing need for verification of your reporting. And that was one of the aspects that we spoke of upfront and called it one of the mega trends. Now, if that is a mega trend that is important, why is it so? Because how long will you and me read an annual report hoping and believing that everything that is put in the annual report is true to the word, true to every word? Now, that is what we're doing today. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody cooks numbers, but there is enough and more suspicion that is there. So we've got to be very clear and fair. So what is being asked for is to, with your reports, also submit something that's called a third-party assurance. Somebody said audit and assurance is the same word. So third-party assurance independently. Again, assurance can be done by a team that is in-house internally, like your company secretaries and that kind of a team. But that's very internal and first party. What is being asked for is a third party assurance, and that is what will put that stamp of approval. And of course, if that stamp of approval by any chance still happens to be untrue or not completely true, then you know who's next to kind of catch hold of. That is at least very clear, right? So that third party assurance is what is coming into picture. ESRS has asked for it, European Union, US has asked for it, BRSR hasn't asked for it, but by the looks of it, there's a good chance that they will soon ask for it. Why do I say that? Because of this bottom thing on this picture. It's called IS 26002. What is it? This comes from Bureau of Indian Standards, BIS, where BIS, by the way, just so that all of us are on the same page, is the Indian entity that implements, or rather that issues guidelines in the country alongside ISO. So whatever ISO declares as a standard out there for the world, individually, every country has a guidelines issuing authority, let's call it so, for their respective countries. In India, it's called the BIS. So it's Bureau of Indian Standards. They sit out of Delhi, and they are looking at the ISO standards and then saying, how do we align them, the ISO standard, for the Indian environment? And more often than not, it's a very straightforward one-to-one alignment. Maybe they would have added a few aspects that are relevant to the Indian context. So that's the BIS reference. But having said that, what BIS has done and ISO hasn't is talk about this third-party assurance for non-financial indicators. So today, as we speak, ISO doesn't have a standard for non-financial reporting, so to say. They have a lot of things from that 14,000 family for LCS, for GHA assessments, etc., but nothing for the non-financial reporting aspect per se. So what did Bureau of Indian Standards do? And I'm happy they did that. They didn't wait for ISO to come out with it. They referred to the global standards or global reference points when it came to such reporting. And those global reference points are things like these. A8000, which comes from an organization called Accountability. It's accountability in a word, but it's AA's accountability. That's what A8000 is about. That's an organization that does that globally. Again, I think they sit out of US. They're headquartered out of the US. So is the IS AE3000, another standard that's been out there. And they do a lot of these declaration of standards for non-financial reporting. So both of these are US based, but I think they've used pretty much by large companies across the globe. Till this point, they've been the most popular ones, these two. And in that context, what BIS did is that they took a leaf out of those folks and came out with an India specific standard 6 months back. 6 months back. And if they have come out with an India specific standard talking about how sustainability reporting can be assured and audited, there should be a reason for them to do it. Why else would they do it if it was not to connect with BRSR, is my take on it. So sooner than later, if you guys wanted to explore your careers, you may also want to see how you can also upskill yourself on the assurance side of things so that you are much better positioned to kind of explore that market. Sooner than later, BRSR will have a requirement to say every BRSR report should be assured and audited based on IS 26002 guidelines. Right? So that's the other side of the story that you guys have to be aware of. Guys, I know a lot of acronyms have come out. I know there's too much of jargon out there, and that is why I was taking it slow to begin with, but happy to pause and listen to you if you have any concerns about the way we are bringing these all out in the open.
Anveshi, I have a question, and this is good. Because a lot of it is also being derived from the way the financial statements are getting worked out, right? So like we have a tally kind of a system for financial recording, etc., correct? Is there any such system that exists for the ESG space as such?
Yes.
Specifically on the verification side?
Yeah, I won't say it's on a verification side, but the tally system, of course, captures numbers. The verification will happen with the auditor walking in and checking your tally system for the numbers in the database that is out there. So on similar lines, there is something, I mean, different jargons, different references of these softwares. Somebody calls it carbon management software. Somebody calls it an ESG platform. Somebody calls it differently. But the point is, there is a lot of softwares that are coming out, including from the leading IT tech companies in India and abroad as well, including from the leading consulting companies in India and abroad. And of course, there's a lot of standalone. So today, again, in that space, there's a lot of action happening. Again, I don't think there's a straightforward way to answer it, but the best way to kind of bring it out in terms of giving you some guidance is to look out for SAPs, because the reason I say SAP is because they are predominantly by far the most widely used ERP platform, which is essentially the platform where businesses capture all their data about operation, sales, inventory, etc., etc. So SAP has come out with something called, they call it the sustainability tower. That's the name I believe they give for the larger platform. So what they've done is on the ERP, on top of the ERP, they've built a layer which says we will capture your emission data that goes with the whole operations. And based on that emission data, we'll be in a position to kind of help you put out the numbers for any audit. At the end of the day, what is an emission number? The emission number is some sort of a business activity multiplied by some sort of a metric or some sort of a factor to come out with a footprint. And that business number, business metric is what is available, fortunately, for somebody who's got an ERP system like SAP right in that database. Right. So that's the way it's going to be panning out.
Understood. Great.
Yeah. Guys, questions? Like I said, I have a few more slides, but I'm wanting to pause only because I'm afraid I may have thrown too many things on you. And so I want to definitely give you an opportunity to ask.
I have a question. You can either choose to answer it now or at the end of the session, because it's more of
Have I lost you?
Me?
Yeah, sorry, my mic got unmuted. So my question is, for professionals who are working on the sustainability reporting, I had a random check before this workshop on like what are the certifications that are required, and there is no one such certification. It says it depends, and there are so many certifications. So is there any particular approval or certification that requires for us in India to work on projects, or be able to say, that this person is authorized to make this reporting?
So you're talking of reporting. I'll answer your reporting question and I'll add another dimension to it quickly. But to start with, for you to be doing a reporting exercise, there's absolutely no reporting requirement or qualification, so to say. Yeah, I mean, it's always helpful to say, I have understood, have thing as 2-week kind of course on GRI's framework, etc. But no mandate. There's no mandate. Having said that, because we are on this very slide, I want to bring it out in the open that when we talk of assurance and who can do the assurance exercise, you, me, everybody under the sun cannot. It has to be somebody who's certified as an assurance service provider. Even for that, for the fact that I referred to BIS and IS 26002, they are going to open up the whole process of empaneling entities and organizations who can be certified as auditors and assurance providers in the space of the non-financial sector. Yeah. So, but that's the place where you would really need that certification and authentication, but not for you to do a reporting exercise for sure.
Okay, and that would be a global platform on the same line that everyone will have to practice, or then again it would depend on what kind of businesses or what kind of field that we are reporting for.
So if you look at AA1000, ISA 3000, these are globally used assurance frameworks, right? So if you look at those two, yes, when you get yourself into the club of an assurance provider on these two, you would definitely be able to do that globally, irrespective of the country. But when it comes to IS 26002, because it's Bureau of Indian Standards, the very obvious restriction would be the fact that it applies only for the Indian geography.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Sorry for asking again. Can you explain again the difference between frameworks and standards with some examples? Like, what is the standard?
I'll give you a simple example. I'll give you some GRI 25 years in existence. I told you, right? They're the oldest one. When they started off, they were only able to give something that was more of a guideline, right? When you're in that sort of a format, when you're giving guidelines, you're probably telling, see, I'm setting boundaries. I'm telling you, this is the boundary in which you have to kind of stick on. If you go beyond the boundary, you're not sticking to the framework. So when that boundary is put together, it is more of an aspect that says that it is good to be in this boundary for you to be clearly reporting as per GRI. So guidelines, frameworks, all of them are very much something that happens in an initial phase of the journey, like GRI. Today, the same GRI is a standard because they've matured to the extent where they can say, you stick to this. If you don't stick to it, you're not going to be GRI compliant. So a standard is a standard. There's no midway there. It's 0 or 1, yes or no. Framework is a little more flexible, I would say, in the sense that you could say I'm compliant with 70% of the framework. That's still fair enough. But with a standard, you can't say that. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Can we wait for a few more seconds, or should we move on? We have an exercise to do. We have a break to take as well. So yeah, feel free, guys.
At 1 max, we can go for a break for 15 minutes so that as a time.
Let me just quickly see. Can I do this one slide and then there's anyways break time coming up?
Yeah, sure. So like after this session, we'll have a 15 minutes of Q&A. If we could not wrap it up at 1 o'clock, we need to have a break because.
Fair enough. I think we'll guys stay for a few more minutes and you'll have your break.
Bharti, can I mute you because there is some disturbance coming?
All right, great. So when we started off these slides, and I brought these 3 things in front of you, many to one, voluntary to regulatory, trust-based to assurance-based. Now, when you see this slide, I'm hoping it makes a lot more sense. Now, when we've spoken for the last hour or so, I mean, maybe more than an hour and a half, whatever, but I think it's making sense, hopefully. Many to one, we talked of that whole consolidation that happened, SASB, IARC, CDSB, all are merging into ISSB. Mainstream reporting and sustainability reporting is getting combined into integrated reporting. That's the kind of aspect that I want you guys to be aware when I said many to one. Voluntary to regulatory. What does that mean? ISSB has expressed its intent, and I mentioned this, to work with jurisdictions to align with regulatory directives. Now, when you receive this material, and I'm sure Pratiksha shared it or she will share it, you have the link that gives you that aspect of what they're talking about. So please feel free to read and get yourself aware of this, right? CDP will also incorporate, and this is, like I said, happened in COP27, they'll incorporate ISSB related disclosures into its reporting platform. Nigeria announced it. I mentioned this. So whatever links you're seeing, feel free to read them to get yourself a sense of what's happening today, and to keep yourself on top of these things. I strongly recommend that you subscribe to the newsletter and alerts that IFRS gives you an option to subscribe to on their website. So it's important for you to be aware. The reason I'm saying IFRS is because that's the parent organization, IFRS Foundation. So you can subscribe to that and you'll get a sense of this as they progress, as things happen in the days to come. Trust-based to assurance-based. Regulators are increasingly asking for third-party assurance of ESG efforts. We did talk about that as well. At the same time, I did mention BIS in India has published a 26002 standard for non-financial reporting, including ESG. The 26002 the standard covers 8 different aspects. One of them is ESG. There's also CSR in there, by the way. If folks in the call are familiar with CSR and how it works, today CSR need not necessarily have a third-party assurance. But come tomorrow, with the fact that IS 26002 is out there, there will be that need for a third-party certification for all your CSR reporting as well. That's also coming under 26002. So this is what I meant by the mega trends. I think that's a nutshell. I think 15 minutes of Q&A. What Pratiksha was mentioning, we can get into it now.
Yes, Apurva, we will share everything on the Google Drive. So you will have every discussion which we had and the reference material gone through all of this. So if you have any questions, I know we are not going in depth of this framework, but I hope that you all can Google and YouTube. There are a lot of options where you can just click GRI YouTube videos are there. So we just wanted to clear all this mergers and acquisition, what is happening in the framework world. So if you have any doubt, please ask.
Anvesh, I have a question. So,
sure. Hello.
Hello.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Nandana.
Yeah. So, if a company wants to do a property assessment based on ESG, have you ever come across this?
Wait a minute. Did you say property assessment based on ESG?
Yes.
What sort of property? Are we talking of real estate?
Yes.
Okay. What would that mean? Are you talking of something to align with green buildings? Is that what you're talking about?
Green buildings is just a framework, right? In terms of how you achieve a certification. But if I want to do a sort of a risk assessment, say I want to invest in a property with the X company, and I want to do a ESG risk assessment.
So when you say I want to do, are you a real estate?
I am going to purchase that property. So
okay, and so you're saying, how do I know if the property I'm picking has the right coverage on ESG?
Correct.
And in that context, I think you're talking more of E than S and G, more of environment.
Is that correct? Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if there's a straightforward answer to that, but the way I would say is that I think there's a way for you to get a footprint analysis, like somebody said LCA. So in cases of properties, especially, there's an increasing significance of what is called embodied carbon. Has that term come to your notice?
Yes.
Yeah. So for the folks on the call, embodied carbon is all the carbon that is already there in the building because of the way it was constructed, right? So that's what embodied. So the kind of steel that's gone into it, the kind of cement that's gone into it. So Nandana, right? So what I'm saying is that you got to really get that sense of what that property has used as the material that's gone into it. So that's one aspect that you clearly need to assess. And for that to be done, again, I would say ISO has a 14,000, I think 40 maybe, where the GHG assessments are called out, right? So ISO 14,040, 40 or 42, one of those numbers has the GHG assessment. So you've got to probably get that assessment done with that particular angle. Plus, of course, the operational aspects where you would want to be aware, if I am occupying this property, and I don't know if you're buying it, you're leasing it, depending on what you're doing with that property. If I'm occupying it for the next 20 odd years, what sort of a footprint do you imagine that to be like? So you look at both sides of the story and then come out with a decision point saying, is this ready? And the third one I'm sure is important is, by any chance, if it was in a I don't know, climate emergency prone area,
you mean
closer
like a
to
flood or natural disaster area?
Yeah, exactly. Closer to the seashore, closer to river banks and things like that, right? So you got to kind of also look at that angle to assess the risks. And in that context of risk analysis, going back to TCFD that we spoke about very briefly, there is a mention of something called scenario analysis, which is a very exhaustive exercise in itself, but I would suggest that you could also look out on, read upon TCFD's scenario analysis, which is more forward-looking. It is more forward-looking in terms of what it could look like, and that's another aspect of an assessment that should be relevant for you.
Great. Right.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Nice.
Hi, Akhilesh.
Yes, Akhilesh.
Do we have any certification for products as well? Like this is like this is eco-friendly or eco-friendly certification. This is a carbon footprint. Anything in the Indian standard which is there?
In India, did you say?
Anywhere. First in India and then abroad as well.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's very I don't think it's the word is mature, but it's not really so very well structured in India for that matter. And globally also, the way I understand is that there is a bunch of different certifications that you could go for. Something that is like a fair trade. Have you come across fair trade?
Yes, heard about that.
Yeah, fair trade gives you a certificate that is about ensuring that your practices, not just from an environmental perspective, but also from the social and governance perspective, are right in terms of how. Let's look at fair trade. They have, I think they issue certificate for one of the textile brands, a jeans brand. I can't recall which one. So if it was a jeans brand, what they would want to kind of look at is how was the cotton sourced? What sort of wages are the farmers earning there? What are the living conditions of those farmers? Because you, as the entity who's giving out a garment to the consumer, you've all of course been sourcing it from the supply chain. So how does that supply chain pan out? Child labor, etc., etc. And then comes the fact that what sort of a footprint has gone into it. So fair trade does that level of analysis to give you a fair trade logo that you can stamp on your products that you sell. But that's not the only one. That's not the only one. There's warriors of the sea or something like that. I've very recently come across some of those terms as well, where you're talking about how marine life and oceans are getting impacted because of your practices. Maybe far more relevant for the shipping vessels and the logistic providers that who operate them. Maybe also far more relevant for the marine fisheries and those kind of businesses. But yeah, there are different for different product lines. There may be different ones that come out in the open. There's nothing that is a de facto single standard for almost every product line out there.
Yeah,
So
just
there
as
are
an
no at least nothing
example,
for.
sorry, just as an example for paper, there's this FSC certified paper.
Say that loud again. Say that again.
For paper, if you're using paper, then there's FSC certified paper, which is recycled
FSC.
paper. Yeah,
Okay.
FSC is a certification.
That's for not only paper, sir, it's for the wood application.
Yeah, for wood applications as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nice. So you were saying something, Akhilesh, I think, on top of this.
Right. Yeah. So I was asking, like, because I think fair trade, many of these are more international. Many in the local Indian customers or consumers aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have any international standard like BIS, which is defined for the Indian context or the
No,
market.
wait a minute. No, BIS also, because I told you at some point that it's aligning itself with ISO, and ISO has an exhaustive coverage for pretty much everything under the sun in terms of standards. So I would strongly believe BIS also would have some standards for different products. So maybe for food products, FSSAI and BIS may have come out with something, right? I am not personally aware of all of those things, so I am not able to guide you there.
Okay, sure. Let me explore now. Thank you.
Please. No more questions, guys?
So can we take a break?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Sure. Everybody's mind is bursting with the jargon, so we need to have this break. So
Sure.
we'll catch up soon, everyone. I'll just putting a time. Like if we take at 1 o'clock, as per our welcome kit and tradition. Just give me 1 minute. I'll tell you the time when we can get back. Till the time you can read my commentary, where I have put all the links you need for learning GRI, TCFD, and CDP. Just go in any website which you go as on a web like rating or framework. Just go to the MCQ section where they have demystifying what exactly it is. So in the FAQ section, sorry, not MCQ, FAQ section, you will get to learn a lot. I always do that. It's a trick to learn more about it.
What framework, or then it has to be specialized based on those geographic locations?
Yeah, so this question seems to be similar to what was asked earlier, but clearly the answer is that if you are working across different geographies and each geography has a regulation of its own, you are unfortunately required to comply to each of those geography. So having said that, someone like a EU, which I told you upfront was one of the most comprehensive and exhaustive one, what they've said is, even if you are, let us say, EU-based company, and you are having a subsidiary in the Indian geography, your Indian subsidiaries data should also be reported in the EU.
So then it adds both together, right?
It does add, but that doesn't necessarily mean the Indian subsidiary. At this point, let us be aware that if it is listed versus it is not listed is two different things. There are Indian subsidiaries that are listed. When I say listed, of course, they are on the share market. And if it is listed in the share market plus it is in the top 1,000, BRSR still applies to that company.
Okay.
Right. So EU reporting is one thing, BRSR is another that will also apply for such a company.
Okay. All right.
So we can take a break if you don't have a question. 1:15 we can gather.
Sure. Thanks. See you at 1:15, guys.
Yeah, we'll solve the case studies and we'll have one breakout room session where you are going to answer your questions. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
So we are not able to hear you.
Oh, shucks. I didn't unmute myself.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I didn't unmute myself, so I've been speaking for the last minute and a half. Okay.
Okay, I
Fair.
understood that
I'll
when
go
your
back.
cursor moved up, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, sorry. So I'll repeat myself quickly, guys. What I was mentioning is that just before the break time, what we did was we kind of made sure that we are equally on the same page when we talk of those three things. So that that was the basis of our conversation when we began the whole session. And now after the break, we will try to also ensure that we are on the same page when we talk about these four things, which were also there at the beginning of the slides that we saw. So we're talking of these four boxes. All that is expected is for you to take each of these ones at the bottom and align them under each of the four verticals. It could so happen that one box could be relevant for more than two verticals, three verticals, whatever. Feel free to repeat them under any of those four. Now, the exercise I am told is going to happen in two breakout rooms. So you'll be grouped in one of the breakout rooms. And as a group, my expectation is that you should discuss and agree on where you should slot it. And be aware that there are a couple of them or more than a couple of them in this list that you see at the bottom, which may not have been discussed in the last session before the break. So if that is so, internet is your source to kind of figure out and align them. I want you to do that exercise for those two or three boxes that may not have been discussed. So is that expectation clear, guys?
Yes.
We need to align these things under the each of the bucket at the top.
Yeah. Just align them. Right. And the only additional point I made was that it could so happen that a box that's at the bottom could align to more than one vertical, which is equally okay. Make sure you have a clear reason to do that. All right. I think, Pratiksha, I think that's a brief. Breakout rooms can be started then.
Yeah, just just one advice, like if commit and contribute, you can just put anything which you think is relevant, just below one below one after one. Yeah, we are just just done with the breakout room, just setting up a time. Till then you all can go on a drive and just.
So it says breakout room 1 and breakout room 2. So we choose by ourselves which room we work on.
No, you'll be automatically sorted into the breakout rooms. So just so that you can have easy conversations, which is why we are separating you out into breakout rooms. Okay. So if there are no questions, shall I open the rooms?
Can we open the rooms?
Yeah, let's get started. Yeah.
Yes. Rakesh and Pritha, can you see the breakout room which we have opened? Ria, we need to assign them. Hello. How to give access to that? I don't think so. I'll check. Yeah.
Are there at the bottom, right?
Yes.
Disclosures and report. We did not put. I'll have to refer back to our slide, but we did not put so many of them under disclose and report. Of course.
Maybe Indranil, it's a good
Yeah.
idea to look at one vertical and move to the second and the third and the fourth one at a time.
Yes, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
On the first vertical, is there anything that has been missed out, has been added just on the first vertical?
Yeah, I'll need to refer to
maybe
somebody else can probably chip in.
I don't think there is anything missed. Either SBTI, SDG, NDC, same EP 100, RE 100, and EV 100. They're the same set of list what we had.
Great. Perfect. Okay. I think Venugopal, you can go to the second vertical and tell us if you have anything to add apart from what we see.
See, in Get Verified and Certified, we had a discussion on whether we should put green buildings here or there. But since I know for a fact that green buildings their own verification process, it makes sense to add here as well as add in the recognition part. So that's one topic we discussed, and I personally I didn't know much about IS over here. Maybe you could help us understand, what are these two standards?
Sure, I will definitely do that. In the meanwhile, any points from the other team?
I think our list is almost the same, but I think within discussion we also had SBTI under verified and certification.
Okay. The team 2, Venugopal and team, can you guys think of why SBTI did not come into your minds?
Yeah, one point is we didn't know whether there is a verification process. We thought it was like an agreement which says that we will follow the SBTI framework towards a commitment. So since I didn't know whether there will be a verification process or if it will be certified, I didn't put it under that.
And maybe so let me come in quickly on the SBTI front, and plus what you said about the A1000 and the ISA 3000. On the SBTI front, what definitely very obviously happens is that you have to declare a target. For you to declare a target, you have to initially sign what is called a commitment letter with SBTI.
Okay.
So commitment letter is signed, and that's the trigger of the process. So that is why it should definitely come under the commitment and contribution. Of course, the targets that you set with SBTI are not targets that are achieved in months and weeks, but it's a year, multiple years that you're talking about. So you've got to consistently make contributions, or rather show how you're progressing towards that goal. That's important, right? So that is the context of SBTI and why it is under commit and contribute. At the same time, when that vertical Get Verified and Certified was put out in front of you, it was to do with the fact that you have to get a third-party check.
Okay.
That was the thought process. Having said that, I think what you guys have come out with, and this is the team that was team 1, I guess, where you said SBTI also needs to be verified and certified. I think it's not a wrong dimension. Although the thought process initially that was there when that vertical was put out there was to bring in third-party angles. SBTIs need to be verified and certified by SBT. SBT needs to be verified and certified by SBTI, which is the institute, for you to kind of move forward. So yes, that could still be relevant, not the initial thought process, but still relevant, I would say.
Got it.
Yeah. Why is the SDG hanging somewhere in between?
The SDG we thought should also be part of the disclose and report. So it was something that I wanted to also discuss.
Fair enough. We'll probably, now that we are done with the second vertical, we could get there. But before we get there, AA1000, ISA 3000 are all about getting third-party assurance of your ESG impact sustainability reports, or CSR for that matter. So that's what it is all about. Hence, it is, of course, going to be relevant from a Get Verified and Certified angle.
Noted. Then for that reason, should BRSR also be part of the get verified?
It isn't there yet, right? That's one of the questions that was raised by someone on the call, where they asked if BRSR also needs to go through it. At this point, the SEBI guidelines don't ask for any sort of a verification and certification.
Noted, noted. Thank you.
Okay. Should we move to the third one? Any questions on the first two? Okay, move on. Third one.
Yeah, the third one we have put all the the different alphabet soup that we discussed. So it was all about the reporting formats and reporting structures. So the GRI, TCFT, CDP, SASB. So all of these we have put it over here.
Yep.
And maybe if there's something wrong over here, we would be open to comments.
Yeah, let's hear from the other team.
I'm just looking out if there is something missed, like GRI, CFT. I think there is one on DJSI. I think we put DJSI as well under disclosure and reporting. I can't find that.
Yeah, we have put it under earned recognition. Okay, so you're suggesting it should be in disclose and report as well.
Yeah, that's what we understood. So we also wanted to put it in both. So we had put it in both earned recognition as well as in disclosure.
Okay.
Yeah. So earned recognition, just while we're discussing the earned recognition piece, was when we said that we will talk about a kind of a badge or a certificate or a grade that you get that you can put out there. I think that is the context of earned recognition. Again, having said that, it's a matter of perspective. If you think DJSI, of course, and DJSI does ask you to report for them to really be able to analyze your performance and give you a rating. So if that's the kind of disclosure that you also thought of, and hence you brought in that into the third vertical, there's nothing wrong about it. But
yeah, I think that was a perspective, because that's also a disclosure, and DJSI, many people brag about it that I'm DJSI, part of DJSI index and all.
Yeah.
That's the reason I put it in earned recognition, and also there are guidelines for reporting under DJSI. So that's the reason I put it in both. That's what we were understanding.
Fair enough. Although the kind of disclosures that happen with someone like a DGSI, or for that matter, any other rating agency, there's always this question raised about they're not a regulatory body, they're not a standards body. So they're somewhere in between because of the fact that they're a rating agency. So the market perception when it comes to reporting on DGSI versus, let's say, a regulatory requirement or a CDP is very different. Yeah, just be aware of that. Having said that, it's still a disclosure.
What does it mean, Anveshi?
So DJSI, because at the end of the day, what happens with DJSI, and I think that's something that will also be touched upon in one of the other workshops on ESG ratings, is that you are, the rating agencies are independently checking a lot of your publicly available data, whether it's your sustainability report, whether it is what the media is talking about you, whether it is what's talked about you on your social media, everything, press, everything. And so based on which they arrive at a conclusion saying how well are you performing on parameters that they have put in their own framework, DJSI framework. Now that assessment is what, once they do, they give it to the company in question saying, this is how we have assessed it. You, Mr. Company, are free to come and debate and discuss with us. And if you think our assessment, because we have of course done it based on accessible data, if you think we've not had access to some data and because of which we've got it wrong, share the data and we will see what we have to revise. Now, the fact that there's so much of back and forth, to and fro happening before the ratings are announced, the outside perception is that it may be influenced as well.
Okay.
Right. Hence, my point is to call a DJSI report as a disclosure may not be completely there, if you know, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah, but I think the details of this would be, if you guys are interested, the next workshop, I don't know when it's coming up, do check out for that, because that person, Vishwesh, who's going to probably run that show, he's working in one of those agencies. He knows the whole setup in and out. Yeah. Okay. So
one question, Mr. Anveshi. So this SDG, does it get disclosed and reported as well?
No, because so you never come across something called an SDG report, but definitely SDG is the theme that you would see coming out in a lot of sustainability reports, ESG reports, and for that matter, even annual reports. There is always a mention that says our organization and the business we do and the way we are operating in our business has a connect or has a contribution to make to SDGs, X number of the 17, maybe 5 of the 17.
Yeah. Can I add on here? Yesterday I
Sure.
went on a ESG summit. So there was the same question, SDG can be linked to the country level or the company level. So if it is a company level, it cannot be assessed for 17 goals. It can be like we are promoting life underwater. Some 4 goals or 5 goals you have to justify that your company is responsible or company is doing so. So it is applicable for a country if you wanted to see the how much India is contributing to SDG. But if your company is doing it, you have to pick which 17 goals from the 17 goals, which one is aligned to your business.
Acha, one small question to that, Pratiksha. Is it also going to be applicable to large organizations which are spread across many geographies?
Yeah, so you in Renil, you need to identify what my organization does and which SDG goal and 169 targets which we have, we are supporting or we are helping. So you need to understand them and you need to align them. So if it is a consumption one, or if it is a climate change one, you are promoting sustainable supply chain, or reducing a plastic in your factories, so you can say that this is my goal and we are promoting this goal.
So simple, right? SDGs are also called global goals.
Global goals.
I think that's the bottom line. If
Right.
it is supposed to be a global goal, that's for planet's good, not for a geographical good. Then it's meant to be across jurisdictions.
No, I think the question that I was trying to ask is that's like Pratiksha mentioned that out of the 17 SDGs, any organization would probably not be catering to all 17, but select few of them. But
Yeah.
for example, if it's an oil and gas company, which is also into exploration, and it's also into supply chain with regard to on land as well as on so mostly drilling happens offshore, right? So it would also have to take care of when they're doing their environmental impact assessment, they would also have to cater into what is their impact on the ocean flora and fauna,
Life underwater.
Life underwater, correct.
Yeah.
So for large organizations like this who basically touch across all the 17 SDGs, would they also have specific SDG goals, or can they also, for the sake of popularity, for example, cater to all, report under all 17 guidelines?
So it's not about reporting under all the 17. It's about saying of the 17, they're very diverse. End poverty is at one end. The other side, it's also talking about industrial production and consumption.
Right.
So you can clearly sense, based on your business operations, which one are you influencing, how much. And there is something, most reports talk about direct contribution to SDGs and indirect contribution to SDGs.
Right.
So you have to identify which of the 17 SDGs are you having a very strong direct link with, and then which ones are you also doing by the sidelines.
Okay, so depending upon the call taken by the organization, so it would also include the scope 3. I'm presuming the scope 3 aspect of it. How much more of that scope 3 are they willing to kind of delve deep into?
When you say scope 3, you're again specifically going into one of the 17 SDGs, which is about climate change.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, scope 3 is, of course, only environment and not more than that. There's also education, there's poverty, there's hunger and food. That different SDGs, 17 SDGs have different agendas.
Right.
So you got to really be a lot more broad-based while looking at SDGs than the emission aspect.
Okay. Understood. Thanks.
Yeah, fair enough.
I have a comment.
I saw a hand raise. Was that?
Sorry. So that was me, Amit.
Okay. Yes, go on, Amit.
Yeah. So I have one observation which I don't know whether it's correct or wrong here, but whatever is coming under commit, contribute, get verified, and disclose, isn't it all at the end to earn recognition?
Yeah. So which is what we would have come to when we go to the fourth vertical, and let's pause that for a moment. But you're right. There is always that opportunity, and we'll get to that. At this point,
And
I think we're still on the third vertical. Yes, Amit.
And the second comment I just want to make on what Indranil was just saying about SDGs. So when I'm reading through many annual reports and everything, what I have also observed that organization has already aligned its focus on certain areas. And it might happen, I mean, I'm assuming here, because there are certain areas in which they are working, they would be back calculating on which of these are activities may be aligned with the SDGs.
Yeah.
So it may not be necessarily that they define first that these are the SDGs on which we want to work and then define my course of action. Or there might be other way where they might be saying that, okay, we have these activities. Now let's go back and see which of these activities are aligning or impacting the SDGs. That's my observation. Yeah.
Point. Yes.
I have a question or rather discussion to share.
Please.
Like, for example, company A has more environmental impact, say, on the ocean or in the forest area. So if they say that they are working on education of the poor, so can that be compensated, or is there a framework in which it says that because your company is mainly focusing on water-based or forest-based resourcing or anything, so that definitely needs to be addressed as priority, and then education or hunger, whatever, can be taken as a secondary thing. So does it prioritize in any way based on
There's
the
no
framework
guideline.
as
There's no guideline on that, but very clearly, I think what is important is for every organization to realize there is a direct business side impact on SDGs, and there's also an indirect impact that you could have because of your heart being at the right place, might say. Yeah. So if that is also there, which is good, but what is definitely important is, like you clearly said, pointing out the direct impact upfront. Does that help? Hello.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is what I was getting at.
Absolutely. And guys, since we spent so much time on SDGs, I think what we did not discuss, and I'm not sure how well it was also discussed in the breakout room, the NDC, which is there, which we see in this picture on this first vertical. What is your understanding of the NDCs, guys? Anybody quickly? Okay, because there's a long silence, I'm going to quickly take this up. So SDGs, like I said, are global goals. SDGs need to be achieved by 2030. But for that to happen, 150, 190 odd countries that we are should also figure out what they will, each of us will make a contribution with at a country level. And that's exactly what NDCs are meant to be. So every country, when the Paris Agreement was signed, I think in the subsequent 2-3 years or something like that, declared their own NDC. And then they said by declaring these SDGs, we are saying that we will achieve some targets in the coming years by this timeline. Last year, COP26, these NDCs, every country was expected to come in with revisions to it, updates to it, because we have already entering the decade where 2030 is right there. So there is an expectation to revise the NDCs. In fact, India, 4 months back, happened to revise the NDCs and announce what will be their renewed targets. Till 4 months back, our targets were something else. Now, because of the aggressive stance that the COP meets are taking, India revised its targets as well. So have other countries. So NDC is nationally determined contribution towards, of course, the SDGs. And predominantly today, the biggest contribution that is expected from countries out there is how do you address the footprint of your country, carbon footprint. Is that something you guys are clear about now?
Yes, and also for the national level, then again it further, I think, breaks down at the state levels. So,
Yes.
for example, Karnataka is working on the Pavagada solar energy, and they've already met the targets before the deadline. So, I think state-wise also, certain states have taken up certain priorities on the SDGs.
Yes.
To then merge it into one national level.
That's exactly how it is done, right? I mean, otherwise, a country declaring is going to have no sense if the states are not aligned accordingly. You're right. Okay. Maybe fourth vertical, Venugopal, do you want to quickly touch upon the fourth one?
Yeah, the fourth one, we have brought up some of the topics that were already there, like the ISO BIS. It's also a company level recognition. So we thought it should be here in recognition as well. And if some company is also getting a better score in DJSI, it's like a badge of honor that they can also put up. And many of these points, like the green buildings also, it's used for marketing and promotion material as well, that our buildings are all green buildings, etc. So this is the reason, this is the logic by which we have put here, and maybe the AA 1000 and ISAE 3000 as well. If we just need your input, if it can be here as well, along with what we have put under verified and certified. So
fine. The other team, please.
I think we don't have AA 1000 and ISA 8000 in this our list. Even ISOBS, the rest all are there.
Okay, so I think Amit had a point where he said everything that you're talking about from first three verticals, at the end of it, isn't it all meant to earn recognition? I mean, if you look at it clearly, that is what I think most companies are doing their corporate sustainability initiatives based on. There is a need for them to see that the work that they do earns them the right recognition in the eyes of their important stakeholders, very obviously. Now, while that is the case, earned recognition in this vertical, at least when it was put out, was to say something that is a stamp of approval, or rather a certificate or a grading, like I said. So ISO BIS, yes, the fact that you're ISO certified earns you a clear distinction. CDP A to F, CDP grades companies based on their submissions between grade A to grade F. Of course, everybody out there wants to go for grade A. That's the best of the lot. A plus, I guess, not even A plus.
CDP would also come under this.
I'm sorry, CDP would, yes. Because of the fact that they give you a rating or a grade there, right? Then there's green buildings, which is obviously, if a building is having a green building certified 5-star rating, you would see when I don't know if you've done this, but some buildings which are certified, they put it up very much out there on the building facade, saying this is a 5-star rated building. So that's another badge of honor, so to say. DJSI ratings is another, because there is a clear number in rating to it. Having said that, that's the places where it's very clearly, distinctly visible. Having said that, it is also to be noted that the other aspects can still lead you to earning recognition depending on how you put it out there. The RE1000, EV1000, RE100, EV100, EP100 are also aspects that can be projected in a manner that you are part of a certain club which is committed to something exclusively. But that's of course an aspect that you may or may not put out there. It's not like a grading that you earn. It's just something how you can put out there. So clearly recognitions are possible through everything that we've talked about till now, in that sense. Yeah. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When a company, say a manufacturing company, is going, for some of these ratings, if they are not going to be a investor focused company, say like an MNC, how does it add value to them? Apart from the recognition aspect, does it add any business value in terms of incentives?
It does, because investors are looking at it, right?
Okay.
So when companies are doing their business, they are of course looking for capital flow. Capital flow comes from the investor community, and investors today, in fact, the larger agenda of ESG has only come to prominence apart from regulatory reasons because investors wanted to understand companies based on ESG.
Okay.
It has been one of the prime factors. So yes, that is the angle.
Understood.
Yeah. And basically, sorry, Venugopal, please go ahead.
Yeah, so if it's a cash rich company, let's say, they are not dependent on investors for capital. So it's more for attracting customers. Can we look at that angle, or what are the other business angles we can look at, for going for a lot of this?
Given where we are, the generation that is coming in, based on studies, is clearly being presented as somebody who's much more aware of what's happening out there with the environment.
Understood.
From a consumer angle, I mean, even from an employee angle, there is a lot of talk about, and I'm yet to witness this firsthand. There's a lot of talk about employees making a choice of their employer based on how responsible they are.
Very interesting.
Now, those could be other angles. Having said that, there's nothing called a cash-rich company. Even in Reliance Group looks for investments from the Aramcos of the world.
True.
Right. So there is nothing called a cash. There's enough and more ambition, business ambitions people carry.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. Was there another question? Okay. No. I think I'll take the screen share back quickly to spend 5 minutes on something that I wanted to share with you guys, and then we'll take that forward. 1 second. Yeah. So the fact that you guys have spent the last 3 hours talking about, or rather listening to and discussing with me on these different facets, why did we even have it structured this way? Why did you go through all of this? Now, what are you seeing in front of you? This particular graphic is what is important. Now, this comes from a report that was published by Microsoft and BCG, Boston Consulting Group, last week, maybe 10 days back. It's all about saying what is the kind of skill sets on sustainability that is in demand out there. It's all about, it's telling you what does an all-rounder or a well-rounded professional in the sustainability space look like. Now, look at this. There's different things that are about skills and knowledge, and there's different things that are about competencies. Now, let's look at it. First thing, from a sustainability work perspective, there are roles out there which are about implementing initiatives. Maybe somebody wants to do a solar power project implementation to drive renewable energy as a project. That's an implementation aspect. And there are professionals who have that skill on implementation per se. There's professionals that are required on a strategy perspective. How do you even plan a roadmap? When we say these things are 10 years, 20 years kind of roadmaps, how do you plan that? And then there's the enablement, which is to make sure that between the strategy and the implementation, how do you translate it? And how do you kind of make sure that the ecosystem is properly supported from policies to procedures and everything else that is required? So if that is what a typical sustainability work profile looks like, how do we kind of enable that? How do you kind of make sure that you're having the right skill mix in your own profile? Now, apart from that, there's also an aspect of what you need to also consider in terms of knowledge and skills. Sustainability science, climate science, you know about 1.5 degrees, you know about the fact that there's global warming and the fact that there's a need for us to achieve a certain level of emission reduction in the next 9 years. In fact, today I was reading in the papers, I think we've got only 9 years left to kind of reach that 1.5 degree milestone. If we don't act well enough, we are there, almost there, right? So that's the kind of scientific aspects that you think that is also required to bring to the table. Now, apart from that, there's a requirement to do digital skills. Somebody asked about the fact that is there a system where you can track the data just like financial data is tracked? How do you even know even if there's a system, how do you even know if that system is good enough to track everything? So that's the kind of digital skills you need to have so that you are able to track the data. Then you need to understand things from a different disciplines. Each organization is a coming together of different functions, different departments, different disciplines. How do you understand what sustainability means from an HR perspective? How do you understand what sustainability means from a finance perspective, from a marketing perspective? That transdisciplinarity is what is being talked about as another aspect that needs to be in your skill sets. Then there's the whole aspect of change management. If you know for sure that companies are going to transition themselves towards a different economy called the low carbon economy, then there is a need for that company to also account for the fact that people should move along. That change management that people will have to go through is today everybody's used to working in a certain way. Everybody's used to kind of look at the world in a certain way, and they have to change that outlook, and that change management is what we're talking about. And for all of that to happen, you need to be aware of what it means to look at problems and solutions in a very different manner. If you haven't yet come across something called design thinking, please do. It's all about looking at problems from an angle where you're able to connect to them, just like the actual person who's getting impacted is going to be feeling. So that's the angle of design thinking. And in that context, evolving solutions that will fit that requirement. System thinking, which is to make sure that your idea or your initiative or your action today has an impact on a much, much larger ecosystem, and being aware of that aspect in pretty much every task that you do on a daily basis at work or even otherwise. System thinking is all about looking at it from a larger systems perspective. Futures thinking, being aware of the fact that you cannot really do things today without being aware of what you're leading yourself towards or what your initiative is leading you towards. Being aware of what the future is going to pan out like is important. And at the end of the day, you're talking of circular thinking because you want to make sure your footprint is also being brought down based on the decisions you make across the life cycle, from the design point of view of a product, to the manufacturing point of view, to the operational or the use point of view. How do you make sure, and probably even circling it back from the use back into design, because that's what circularity is about. So how do you bring circular thinking into your DNA from pretty much the design, from the beginning to the end? That's the aspect of circular thinking. Now, all of these is what a skilled professional in this space is expected to kind of bring to the table. Again, this by no means that everybody, or rather every individual, will do everything here, but parts of these are important. So when the whole aspect of the frameworks was put in front of you, and the way it was kind of put in a manner that it kind of maps to different verticals, or for that matter, being aware of the trends that are happening out there, was to make sure that that's the kind of perspective that you build. Because otherwise, like Pratiksha said at some point, there's enough and more material for you to read up on what CDP is in technicalities. But what is important for you to know is to kind of get this sense of what's relevant in the larger picture. So yeah, so when we put the course together for this particular session, there was a sincere effort to kind of get you to that point where you are able to see the larger picture, and from there take yourself into a direction which is relevant based on the profile of your work. So yeah, you're becoming a well-informed professional. You're being able to join the dots in scenarios that are complex. Applicability to your respective sector is important. And then, of course, validation of all sustainability initiatives in a very confident manner. You got to be having the right level of confidence to say, if I were to be asked to validate an initiative, I think I'll be able to do that with confidence. So that's the reason we put this whole thing together. And this is what it should have meant for you. Your points, if you have any, will be good to hear.
No, Anveshi, I think it was covered very well, and for someone who's also been already in the sustainability space, it was also interesting for me to get clarity on some of the aspects. So thank you for that, and I thank the other participants for helping me get that clarity. I think it was very helpful, and I look forward to the other sessions which are going to be happening in the subsequent weeks to come. So again, thank you so much, Anveshi. This was helpful.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay. Anybody else with anything, any question? I'd be keen to see if you have any doubts and questions left in your mind. If not, then we have a quick exercise to do. I was in two minds whether that exercise should be done as a breakout room exercise or should we just brainstorm. But depending on the time that we have, I think we have the ability to go for a breakout room, quickly do a 10-minute exercise, come back. But if you have questions, that takes priority. By the way, just so that you all know, I'm sorry, just one quick point. There's also a lot of material that I think Pratiksha puts out there on social media, on her LinkedIn particularly. Do watch out, because that's where I think you get to know of all of these different discussions and series that are relevant for different professionals. So keep an eye on that. And I kind of know because I've been tracking her posts on social media. Yeah, sorry, somebody had a question.
A very basic fundamental question. How does a company actually take that first step towards starting the ESG journey? So what are the few things that they have to think about?
So to put things very simply, if you're saying it's a first step, you got to first explain the funda of sustainability in a manner that's digestible to that other party. Not everybody is mature to the same extent. And in fact, when you talk of BRSR, just on the BRSR angle, top 1,000 companies, did we know? I mean, I don't know if all of us are aware, but let me bring it out. The 400th ranked company in the top 1,000 to the 1,000th ranked company are all what are called small caps. They are not large companies by any definition. They are what is called small caps. Now, the expectation that SEBI has for them to do a BRSR means that they should have some level of understanding to begin with. And that is exactly the point. So if you're talking to them, first make them understand the funda of sustainability in as much of a 360-degree avatar as possible. Then is when I think the leadership team should come together to figure out their priorities, because they understand the business better. And in that whole mix of things between the understanding and the prioritization by the leadership team should definitely be an inclusion of something called the design thinking kind of workshops, where you bring in different stakeholders into the room and brainstorm with them their observations on the ground are. Trust me, the leadership team, unfortunately, because of the fact that there's so much of a hierarchy, doesn't have a sense of the pulse on the ground. And that shouldn't be missed out, or that should be definitely in the consideration when you're doing your planning for your first few steps of the larger roadmap. Does that help, or have I?
Yes. Yeah, I think that covers on a very large and broad. Thank you.
All right. I think we will quickly do a 10-minute breakout and come back here. I know we are at 2:15, so 10-minute breakout and 5-minute discussion is what we'll do. So Pratiksha, I think you can get us there.
Okay, if you want, we can create a breakout room. Team 1 can you go down on 14 slide?
Yeah, sure.
So team 1 can
Let's
go.
take maybe.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
you do one each. Yeah, we could do one each. We could do one each. Yeah.
I'm opening the group. So team 1, the first one, the company 1, and the team 2, the medium size one. I'm opening the group. Bye.
Yeah.
Riya.
Yeah, Pratiksha.
तू अन्वेषी के ग्रुप में जा, मैं दूसरे वाले ग्रुप में जा रही हूँ.
Okay.
So we have to work on the second question. A medium-sized enterprise has been in manufacturing operations for 2 decades now. They have realized they need to step up their ESG focus due to increasing investor pressure. While they have had an EHS function within their organization, what would you advise them for their 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year roadmap for the EHS agenda? So maybe I can start with my viewpoints and everyone can add. Maybe the first thing they need to form is an internal committee, with the ESG focus. So that will be the first step that they need to do. And since it's a manufacturing company, they will, for the E part, they need to understand what are their emissions. They need to use their old data and understand where they are actually. It should start with the diagnosis phase. So maybe in the 2-year plan, they can diagnose what is their impact, and then maybe validate it with a third-party verifier, in terms of a life cycle analysis or other things. In terms of the S part, they need to get their policies regarding their internal and external stakeholders. The internal stakeholders is your employees, which is already covered in your EHS. Maybe for the CSR, they need to understand the external stakeholders, what they're doing for the community. So that can be a 5-year plan. And on the longer range, they can see if they can get into a reporting type of thing within the 5-year. and take up goals like carbon neutrality, etc., in the 10-year or 20-year horizon. So maybe 3 simple steps: form a ESG committee, measure where they are, then get it verified and reported. That will be your 2-year plan. In 5-year plan, we can think of something like bringing in more projects to reduce the emissions and get better scores. And 10-year plan can be something like a carbon neutrality goal or something like that. So this is what came to my mind. Maybe you can add to it. We can develop on that.
I completely agree with you on that one. I also feel there can be another vertical or an option to do exactly all that you've described. Maybe have a consultant on board who will do all of these things rather than have a internal committee.
We should have both, no?
Yeah, I think so. And like an external third party also, I guess, makes sense since uh, internally there could be a bias towards the initiatives that are being taken, or so either if it is completely given out to a third party consultant or if it is being verified by a third party consultant. So I think I would like to add that one point, and obviously agree with everything that you have mentioned.
Yeah, so I am just putting a separate slide so that it doesn't disturb whatever is there in this slide.
Yeah, sure. So ESG committee, internal committee on one hand, plus an external third party.
And then
So in my point of view, what we should do that before moving ahead for forming of a committee, we should do a baseline study or a scope of study in which we can identify that what kind of work actually are done in EHS already by company, and what other works can be done in like future in ESG.
Sure. I'm highlighting that here. 1 minute.
Hi, this is Pratiksha. I would like to tell that major and understand where we have baseline study. It called materiality assessment. So if the company is going for a materiality assessment, another word for a baseline study, I'm saying. So company needs to do that to understand the 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years plan, where which material topic is a risk for my business and which material topic is a opportunity to work on. So you can write about second step materiality assessment.
Okay. Actually, I was talking about from a CSR perspective.
Yeah, Neeraj, CSR is also important. It is a small part of ESG, but yeah, we can do that as well.
Okay.
So then it would from that part on, it would add to this. So there'll be a repetition or rather an overlap of what is already happening plus what all will be required. So if they do have an internal committee which is probably taking up more responsibility on that front, then I guess having a common framework or a base for all the companies to work on, I think that would also add.
1 minute.
Yeah, correct. And then fill in the gaps probably by adding this ESG.
So that will come in the second part, is it? Understand what other companies are doing. Can I write like that?
Or probably have the same
It's called peer assessment.
Competitor analysis.
Yeah, competitor analysis called peer analysis. You can give a word peer analysis.
Okay.
So Yash has written something. Please take his consideration as well.
PDC.
What have you written? Can someone read? Where should I go with this?
No, you stay there. Also, they can develop an PDCA approach, plan, do, act, check, for the activities which are of priority to look upon for improving the overall upliftment of EHS agenda. First, one more suggestion. There is a EHS policy in the company, so we need to check that as well. So first, I think when we start with the ESG, we check the policies which company has. So it might be an important point.
So not only on ESG, but EHS, but also on other HR related. Also.
Yeah. HR related, there are multiple policies. Okay.
Identify gaps.
Because of time constraint, we will close at 20 to 25. I'll meet you out.
Okay, so the five-year plan, what can we say? Get into reporting, is it? Engage more with the consultant. What should we do at 5 year and what at 10 years?
Probably have a certain goal based on the ESG
Set the roadmap.
values.
Set the roadmap
And
on
set up
each pillar.
Based on the
Example,
material
30
topics identified, we establish KPIs and goals.
And then on a 10-year plan, probably have a overall structure set up where every year or every 2 years it is being reviewed and added or corrections are made based on where they are from time to time.
Yeah, so this plan we will again review.
Reassessment.
Yes.
Sorry, we have to come back because it will just take 5 minutes and we will wrap this up.
Yeah. So what I was suggesting is maybe 2 minutes each for both the teams, just to bring out whatever were the highlights of the discussion, not too detailed, but just the highlights. Maybe team that did the first one can quickly come in. Someone can come in and just point out 2-3 things that is.
Yeah, so I'll just say for team one. So what we felt was that probably what is required is an independent third-party assurance of the report, CDP report, which would lay to rest some of the accusations. What we also felt was, along with the third-party assurance, probably a competency mapping of the in-house sustainability team is required for their lack of overall world view of whatever the changes are happening. Probably they got the reporting scope of reporting wrong. So that is something to be taken care of. And in the end, we also kind of thought that since this has been happening for the past 5 years, and recently, if these greenwashing accusations have come on, then probably it would be of merit to have the legal team look into it for laying rest to some of these accusations, which generally have an ulterior motive for other competing organizations to put a particular company down. So these are the 3 things that we felt that the organization could do.
Did you also mention the legal one, or was that the third point you said?
Yeah, the third point was the legal aspect of it, where a certain amount of legal jurisprudence is required for validating these accusations as well, because it's been going on for 5 years, and these accusations have come up recently. So generally, it's a competing organization that might want to put the name of the reporting company down. So.
Yeah. Okay, so that's exactly what I was on the. So anybody wanting to add anything from the other group on this point, just quickly, not more than 20 seconds. Okay, if not, all I would say is that be aware that greenwashing could happen intentionally and in some cases unintentionally. Like someone said, if this team didn't really realize or they didn't have the competencies and skills to observe a certain facet, and hence it turned out to be visible to the outside world as greenwashing, it is an unintentional one. But then there is enough and more suspicion about the intentional aspects as well. Yeah, be aware that it is not always black and white in that sense. Okay, we'll move on. Team 2, the second case study that you picked up, what did you think of it? What is your solution, advice?
Can you let me share the screen? Because
yeah, with a promise that you will take not
only 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm stopping to share. I don't know if you need special permissions, but that's something for Pratiksha.
Yeah, I can share. Yes. So this was based on a quick discussion. So the requirement is that the company has been there for 2 decades, and what will be our advice for a 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year roadmap for their ESG agenda. So first is we need to form a committee, which can be internal, and also onboard a third-party consultant to avoid bias. Then we need to understand what is the focus area that we need to work on, and also understand what are the other companies doing in this area. So that's something one of our members mentioned as peer analysis or competitor analysis. Then check the existing policies and identify the gaps, like a root cause analysis for whatever incident that has happened or any problems that has happened. And from the environmental aspect, conduct a life cycle analysis and see where we are right now. And then from the social angle, benchmark the EHS initiatives already in place and understand what we are doing externally as well. Then from the G part, get all the legal requirements in place, like employee wages, etc. All that needs to be in place. Then based on the above, we need to set a goal for ourselves, in terms of the SBTi or any other relevant standard. This is what we can do in 2 years. And for 5 years, we need to set a roadmap for each pillar. For example, 30% reduction in carbon, 20% reduction in water, like whatever we have taken, we have to understand where we are against the targets that we have, interim targets that we have taken, and set up a review structure within the committee. And for 10 years, again, review and reassess against the goals we have taken. And for example, whatever status we are at against carbon neutrality goals that we have taken as per SBTi. So this is what broadly we quickly discussed and put it up here. So maybe you can add your inputs.
No, I think very clearly it's horizon is very visible, so you break it down very easily. But for you to do a 10-year roadmap with such kind of a breakdown will be really, it's not practical, it's not possible. So what you did is right, having a 10-year larger goal of carbon neutrality assessment, or maybe interim assessment at 10-year point, 10-year milestone, and breaking it down to 5 years and say what are the targets to get there, and further down looking at what you should do in the next 2 years in terms of actual ongoing initiatives from there on. Yeah, I think well done in that front.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
All right. I think Pratiksha, back to you.
Yeah, we can wrap this up. Can we take one selfie, or can we take a screenshot of participant who are there? If you are okay, we'll just start the video and we can see each other, because this is not a boot camp. Boot camp will have a virtual setup where we call on everybody and introduce everyone. So I would love to see you all. Yeah, cool. Should I take a picture? Is anybody getting ready?
Akhilesh has got his kid as well. I saw Akhilesh's kid on the screen.
Okay, I'm taking a picture. Everybody, please come on. We all look good in any picture. Okay, fast, quick. We have 2 minutes. Thank you, Anveshi sir, for the wonderful lecture. It is amazing to see you every time and listen carefully. So I'm clicking a picture. Please say pizza. Thank you. Okay, done. All the best, and I hope with this workshop, I try to build a community, and you all can come as a sustainability professional or ESG practitioner. So cool. We can wrap this up. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Pratiksha. Thank you, Anveshi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
Thank you,
session.
Anveshi,
Thank you. Very interactive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.